Chapter 607. Didn't you say that your dream is to reveal the truth of this world? This is also part of the truth, right? Zhang Tian smiled faintly. Not only can you publish it on the dark net, but you can also publish it on the international internet. You really have a journalistic spirit. Meryl was stunned, then she gave him a thumbs up and silently praised him. But you have to be careful. Zhang Tian said, let's put it this way. I only want the elites of the world to know part of my strength through certain channels, but forget about the ordinary people. Zhang Tian thought further. This time he wanted to show his strength. He wanted all the strong people in the world to submit to him, and he also wanted to attract those rich people to come over and build Sidonie together. I don't need to hide anymore. It's time to show my sharp edge that can kill all living things. Zhang Tian smiled faintly, then a light flashed in his eyes and he said to himself, it's fine if these superpowers are peaceful, but if they don't challenge me and dare to offend and provoke me. When the time comes, I'll show them which is stronger, the cultivation civilization that has developed for hundreds of millions of years and once swept across the universe, or the modern technological civilization on Earth that has only a few hundred years of history. Although the European Union, Russia, the United States and other superpowers strictly guarded the news of the battle at Cass Lake, the relevant news still reached the dark net. Suddenly, the entire dark world was shocked, as if a ladle of water had been poured into a pot of oil, completely boiling. A real immortal state battlefield. All of them are immortal state or existences comparable to immortal state. A super luxurious battle. This is Kong Techu's strength. Zeus, Professor and Athena died in battle and the Wolf King lost an arm. What's Kong Techu's cultivation level? It's too unbelievable. Zeus is a saint, a human immortal comparable to Wuxia. Kong Techu alone fought the Winter Soldiers, Blue Storm and the Palace of Gods, 3 powerful organizations. Kong Techu is invincible. 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 Kong Techu is invincible, invincible, invincible. Who is he going to get rid of this time? No one is his match. My saber is thirsty and thirsty again. None of the experts were able to calm down. The posts flooded the screen crazily as the experts vented the shock in their hearts to their heart's content. Professor Alexander the Wolf King, Athena, Gar the Wolf, Plehanova the Ice Witch, Zeus. Each and every one of the names that dazzled the starry sky were all existences that were comparable to the deity realm or had surpassed the deity realm. They were either overseeing a region and dominating it, or they were in charge of a country's powerhouse organization, making the country's head of state rely on them. They were so powerful that other than nuclear weapons, anti-tank missiles, cruise missiles and other weapons of mass destruction, no conventional weapons could kill them. But this time he actually fell or was defeated by Zhang Tian. Especially Zeus. He had topped the power rankings several times and was the world's #1 powerhouse. The Winter Soldiers were backed by Russia's Northern Army, Blue Storm had close ties with the Pentagon, and the Palace of Gods was inseparable from the European Union and the Holy See. They were all supported by the major countries of the world and were the top 3 powerhouse organizations in the world. But they were still defeated by Kong Techu as easily as chopping vegetables. If Kong Techu wasn't invincible, then what was? The Observer is indeed worthy of being called the Observer. She actually predicted that Kong Techu and Zeus would fight in advance. At this time someone mentioned the Observer again. That's right. She predicted that Kong Techu and the Winter Soldiers would fight Blue Storm and the Palace of Gods. But she also didn't expect that Kong Techu would defeat the 3 powerhouse organizations in one battle. Someone exclaimed. Just as everyone was engrossed in the discussion, the Observer appeared and released a bombshell. Detailed analysis of the Battle of Cass Lake, how powerful Kong Techu is. This time the Observer released a high-definition video recorded by a high-speed camera, accompanied by detailed data analysis. The first video was of Zhang Tian killing Gar, Siberian Hammer, and the Ice Witch within a few seconds and severely injuring the Sea Lady. The high-speed camera was very powerful. It could record more than 100,000 frames per second. 1 second of footage could be played as 2 hours. At that time, Gar and Siberian Hammer were attacking at close range, while the Ice Witch and the Sea Lady chose to attack from a distance. The Ice Witch was the furthest away. After some calculations, she was 1,000 meters away from Kong Techu. This video has a total of 3 seconds. In the first 2 seconds, Kong Techu killed Gar and Hammer. In the second he crossed 1,000 meters and killed the ice which, in other words, his speed reached 1,000 meters per second. The observer analyzed. In an instant the sound of people sucking in cold air could be heard. 1,000 meters per second. More than 2 Machs. More than twice the speed of sound. Many people couldn't believe it and were dumbfounded. Only the overlords who often studied modern weapons understood what this number meant. The speed of a pistol's bullet was usually 400 meters per second. In other words, the bullet was only 1 centimeter away from Kang Teichu's head. He could easily dodge it. The famous Tomahawk cruise missile's speed was only 0.72 Mach. This meant that if Kang Teichu warned in advance, he could even escape the cruise missile's bombardment. Kang Teichu's cultivation has been improving. Even when he faced the 28-man mixed brigade in Japan, he didn't burst out with such speed. The observer's words were shocking again. Everyone was worried. The battle in Japan was less than a year ago. In less than a year, Kang Teichu's combat power had improved so much. The future. Everyone didn't dare to imagine. Powerful combat power wasn't scary. The most terrifying thing was that the combat power was increasing rapidly and even infinitely. He had already surpassed the immortal state. What about the future? Would he become a real god? Then, the video of Jiang Tian killing the overlords of the Winter Soldiers and a few alpha wolves was released. Oh my god. Which of these gene-edited freaks doesn't have a strong physical body that can take on cannons head-on? But Jiang Taichu killed them like chopping vegetables. Invincible. 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 Everyone was dumbfounded. Their hearts trembled and their blood boiled. They wanted to roar to the sky. When the last 2 videos were released, when everyone saw Kang Teichu controlling the black hole, to exile Zeus and kill Athena with one hand, everyone was speechless. The forum fell into a terrifying silence. Thousands of overlords hiding in the dark all over the world stared at the computer screen. Their pupils kept trembling but no one dared to say a word. After a full 10 minutes, someone finally exclaimed loudly as if his soul had returned to his body, "Brother, this is an instant kill." From the beginning to the end, it took less than 3 seconds to kill 2 overgods and 2 mighty figures on the power roll. The most terrifying thing is, what method did he use to kill Zeus? Have you seen it before? Have you heard of it? Zeus seems to have suddenly disappeared. The observer, what method is this? Can you explain it to us? What's Kang Teichu's cultivation now? Has he surpassed the saint? Saint is a Western term. In Wuxia's cultivation system he should be called an immortal. Has Kang Teichu really become an immortal? But the observer didn't answer these questions. She quickly went offline. The unknown is the root of fear. It's also good to leave a sense of mystery. You can figure it out yourself. After a long time someone suddenly asked. But, the observer, how did this battle break out? Did Kang Teichu go to Russia? Idiot. Russia is covered in ice and snow now. Don't you see the trees here? Damn it, get lost if you don't know how to chat. You're delaying our understanding of the situation. Someone yelled. I found out from a secret channel that this battle took place in an African island country, Sidonie. After someone revealed the news there was dead silence. Everyone instantly understood the crux of the matter and was dumbfounded. Kang Teichu is Sidonie's master now. I heard that before World War II in the Middle Ages, there were immortal state experts who easily destroyed cities and controlled the governments of small countries. They were insufferably arrogant. But after the rise of nuclear weapons after World War II, the experts either retreated or became the lackeys of the current superpowers. All the glory was gone with the wind. And now Kang Teichu has done it. Kang Teichu has rewritten history and restored the glory of the cultivators. Kang Teichu's action is challenging the authority of the current superpowers. Maybe it will change the world order and structure. Let's go to Sidonie and join Kang Teichu. Many experts worshipped Jiang Tian madly, treating him like a god and had thoughts of submitting to him. And that was exactly what Jiang Tian wanted to see. Good. This kid is getting stronger and stronger. He's raising the prestige of our country. In the base of the long formation, Zhou Xian read the relevant reports and sighed with emotion. This time the 3 strongest organizations have suffered a great loss. Our dragon group will rise with the tide. The 4 spirit generals and the group of 8 looked at each other with a trace of shock and envy in their eyes. Now Zhang Tian had reached a level that they could only look up to. He was unparalleled and unattainable. This time Zhang Tian had defeated the 3 top organizations in the world and killed the most powerful creatures on this blue planet. And these organizations were on par with the Long Formation or even stronger than the Long Formation. If he comes back, I'm afraid no one can stop him. Maybe Hong Meng? Red Sparrow said in a trembling voice. Although she didn't want to admit it, she had to. Now only Yi Tianren and a few old monsters in Wuxia could fight with Zhang Tian. Why do you have to fight? One is my father and the other is half my teacher. Hearing this, Yi Zhantian lowered his eyes and a trace of complicated emotion flashed in his eyes. Father and Zhang Tian had an agreement of 3 years. At that time, how should he stop that slaughter? Why do you have to stop him? Master Kong has contributed to the country. He saved more than 200 Wuxia refugees. Chao Jinjia glared at Red Sparrow and complained. Yes, Master Kong is now in Sidoni to build this country together. Violent Dragon had participated in the rescue mission and learned some things, so he was allowed to attend this high-level meeting. He's not going to come back? Chao Xixiang was shocked and a trace of deep worry flashed in his eyes. This won't do. This is equal to exposing himself to the threat of nuclear weapons. He should go back as soon as possible. Chapter 608. At the same time, some blurry photos and short videos began to circulate on the internet. At first, it was just a video posted on a newly registered Twitter account called The Witness. If the myths and legends are true, what will the world become? In the video, a figure floated 100 meters in the air and walked step by step toward a city. Below, tanks and armored vehicles formed a torrent of steel. Tens of thousands of people fired at him, but it did not affect him at all. Instead, he easily crushed armored vehicles and raised his hand to cast a lightning net. It can't be real. This must be a movie clip. Wow, it's so spectacular. Amazing. How imaginative. Oh my god, this is a visual blockbuster. Is this director Nolan's new work? Many people quickly reposted it, but most of them were joking and did not believe it. Director Nolan was famous in the United States and had directed many sci-fi and fantasy blockbusters. He was tagged by netizens and immediately reposted the video with a comment. How interesting. At this stage, no special effects company can make such a realistic video. This was equivalent to indirectly denying that it was made by special effects. I recognize this military uniform. It's the military uniform of Sidoni's old government army. Can't be a movie, right? Some military fans paid attention. But soon a second video, a third video, and more videos were posted. Many people's preconceived notions began to waver. The howls of these werewolves are too miserable. It doesn't sound like an act at all. It's full of fear and despair. It makes my hair stand on end. Is it a real battle between gods or special effects? Don't use such clumsy marketing tricks. My appetite has been whetted. In the mobile internet era, information spread like a virus. Soon on YouTube, Facebook, blogs, these videos and discussions appeared. The Witness's Twitter followers quickly exceeded 100,000, 1 million, 2 million. The number of followers rose steadily. Sidoni appears. Wuxia gods and Western gods. The war has broken out. A god appears in Africa. One man defeats tens of thousands of soldiers. Gods, do they really exist? Perhaps the world is about to change. One after another, explosive headlines appeared on the front page of various media outlets. The small media outlets were desperately exaggerating. Even if the traditional media adhered to journalistic ethics and would not jump to conclusions, they still paid close attention to this incident, commenting and analyzing it as a mysterious and unknown event or a cultural phenomenon. All kinds of factors added fuel to the fire, making the battle between Sidoni and the deities even more intense. The Western world was in an uproar. United States, San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Facebook's headquarters building. Chairman Mike stared at the news on the internet and took a sip of his black coffee. Rubbing his chin, he pondered, interesting. Why are these people making up fake news? At this time, the female secretary made an internal call. Chairman, there are visitors. You may need to meet them. Mike looked impatient. Are those stupid entrepreneurs hoping for financing? I don't have time. Maybe you have to. The guest is from Langley Building. The female secretary said. Central Intelligence Agency? Mike was slightly taken aback. He frowned and said, "Let them in." Mike's Facebook had more than 400 million registered users and more than 100 million online users at the same time. Now his personal assets had reached $4 billion US. He was the youngest person to enter the Forbes list of the world's richest people this year. It was his first time dealing with the CIA. Mike twirled the coffee cup in his hand, feeling a little nervous. God knows how many secrets these guys knew about him. 5 minutes later, a tall black man walked in. He was wearing a well-ironed suit, a white shirt and a scarlet tie with a small flag emblem. He was obviously a government employee. He showed his work ID and introduced himself. "Hello, I am Colonel Miller from the CIA. Sir, I have heard of you. You are also a famous alumnus of Harvard. I heard that you used to serve in the Air Force and are a former cybercrime investigation expert in the Air Force." Mike shook hands with him and said, "I am the founder and chairman of Facebook, Mike. Sir, what can I do for you? I also have another identity. I am a strategic consultant for the CIA's Fiery Eye network investigation company." Colonel Miller took out a small black stick the size of a recording pen from his pocket and pressed a button. Mike frowned and felt even more uneasy. This should be a military electromagnetic interference device to prevent audio and video recording. Colonel Miller said faintly, "You have to delete all information about Sidoni's Battle of Gods from Facebook." Mike suddenly laughed. "Colonel, are you kidding? This is not in line with American values, nor is it in line with the law. Citizens have freedom of speech and the media also has freedom of the press. I'm afraid I can't comply with your order. Mike, please take your conversation with me seriously. This is not a discussion but an order." Colonel Miller's eyes showed a trace of coldness. He crossed his fingers on the table and said calmly, "Facebook is a company that abides by the law. I don't think you can do anything to me if I don't carry out your unreasonable order." Mike smiled proudly, tit for tat. No wonder he was called the second Gates of the Internet upstart. He was calm and had a strong aura. Colonel Miller sneered, took out a military tablet from his briefcase and quickly turned it on. This computer was connected to satellites in space, including some spy satellites. It could see what was happening in the United States in any corner of the world. When Mike was in college, he interned at Google and developed paid Google Earth. It was so accurate that he could see a dog in the park. But compared to the CIA's, it was nothing. The resolution of these surveillance satellites could see the words on a newspaper in a person's hand. Colonel Miller quickly operated on the computer and then turned the computer screen to Mike. "I wonder what expression Miss Rachel, who you are pursuing, will have when she sees this picture?" In an open-air pool on the rooftop of a seaside villa. Mike was clapping for sex with a bikini girl. It was so clear that even his body hair could be counted. "Damn it! You are monitoring me? You've violated my privacy and portrait rights." Mike suddenly broke out in cold sweat and glared at Colonel Miller. "We are protecting the United States of America, and you are among our protection." Colonel Miller said faintly, "I, California boy, I can't let you walk out of the sight of your mother. I heard that your company is planning to be listed on NASDAQ. If this girl sues you for infringement, I'm afraid your listing plan will be put on hold. You also know that the United States stock market has always been known for strict regulation. Companies in litigation can't be listed." "Okay, I will delete the relevant information." Mike trembled. He didn't know whether it was from anger or fear, but in the end he said with a face full of humiliation, "Well, thank you for your cooperation." Colonel Miller got up and said goodbye. He shook hands with Mike and smiled. "Mike, the best computer expert will never be in Silicon Valley but in the CIA. I hope you can join us one day." After walking out of the Facebook office building, Colonel Miller got into his bulletproof Land Cruiser. He closed his eyes tiredly and waved to the driver. Next stop to Twitter headquarters. Damn it. An endless fire. 10 minutes after Colonel Miller left. Mike wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and came back to his senses. The CIA was indeed not to be trifled with. Nothing could escape their eyes. He quickly went to the computer and operated it. He found that the related news and discussions on the internet were quickly decreasing. On the other hand, the news of a certain Hollywood female star's marriage made the headlines. It seems that Colonel Miller and the others spent a lot of effort to delete this news. Mike rubbed his chin, his eyes becoming incomparably deep as he said, "The more the government tries to cover up, the more real it is. Could it be that this news is true?" At this time his cell phone rang. It was a call from Mr. Marshall, an old tycoon in the United States. Mr. Marshall was the spiritual leader of the California Consortium. He had a lot of influence in the United States. Including the famous Hilton family, they were all members of his banner. Marshall was also one of the venture capitalists of Mike's Facebook network. At the same time, he was also the grandfather of Miss Rachel, whom Mike admired. "Little Mike, come to Deer Leap Wine Cellar. Many people say that Sidoni's god might be real. I want to hear your opinion." Marshall panted. "Mr. Marshall, I'll be there immediately." Mike knew that Marshall was already in the terminal stage of blood cancer. In fact, Mike had been looking for famous doctors all these years, but there was no obvious effect. San Francisco, in a luxurious manor less than 10 kilometers away from Silicon Valley. The green grass covered a vast area. "Sister, is this really him?" Jenny Hilton sat on the swing and looked at a few photos on the tablet in her hand in amazement. She said in disbelief, "He actually went to Africa and exposed his strength." Wearing a bright red dress, Paris Hilton looked at the distant east. A charming smile appeared on her enchanting face as she said with certainty, "Other than him, who else could it be? He has become the true leader of Sidoni. He is the godfather of the little king and the god they believe in." Jenny's face was full of amazement. Her beautiful blue eyes showed a trace of enchantment as she murmured, "He is really a godlike man." "Yes. He hunted a country. He defeated many warlords and supporters behind them." Paris sighed faintly and said, "It seems that he is destined to stand at the top of the world. The whole world is nothing more than a tool for him to turn the clouds and rain. And now he has finally begun to officially announce his great ability to the world. But he is also facing a crisis that he has never faced before. He provoked the United States." Jenny frowned her beautiful eyebrows and said with a worried face. Paris's eyes showed a trace of sharpness. She looked at the old butler who was standing beside her and said, "I want to meet my father. Maybe this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the Hilton family." Chapter 609. By now Jiang Tian had finished his 3-day inspection. During the 3 days he had gone deep into the tribe and the forest to understand the geography of Sidoni, especially the education and medical standards of the people of Sidoni. The result of the inspection was simple and direct. Sidoni was the most suitable place to build his ideal country. Although this place was primitive and backward, it had no historical baggage. It was like a blank piece of paper and it was easier for him to write freely. In fact, with his strength he can easily suppress Singapore or South Korea and establish absolute authority over a country. But Jiang Tian did not choose this path. The reason was that these countries had all kinds of factions, cultures, beliefs and large interest groups. Jiang Tian had to spend a lot of effort to suppress and pacify them. Although Jiang Tian's words carried weight in Sidoni, he did not consider himself the emperor, nor did he want to become a dictator. He did not want to turn Sidoni into his private property, nor did he want to take advantage of the poor people of Sidoni. He only wanted a piece of land that belonged to him and he could build his own faction and base. According to Jiang Tian's suggestion, Sidoni's interim government had set aside 50,000 square kilometers of land in Sudra Mountain. They had used Wuxia's state-owned land auction system as an example and announced it on the global media as a state-owned land for bidding. This meant that any company in the world could bid for this land. Although it was rumored that this area was rich in magnetite and rare earth resources, other than the Gold Energy Group, no other mining giant had set foot in this area. Even if they knew there were minerals in this area, not many people would bid for it. One had to know that Sidoni had been embroiled in wars for 20 years. Although King Arthur Jr. had ascended the throne and formed a new interim government, who knew if there would be another war? Secondly, Sidoni's economy and culture were extremely backward, and there were plagues and strange diseases everywhere. The geological conditions were also average and it was not suitable for development. The most important point was that the interim government had made it clear that mining was not allowed here. Instead, real estate was to be developed. This instantly blocked many of the international mining giants who were somewhat concerned about this. In the eyes of those real estate tycoons, developing real estate in a poor mountainous area was the biggest joke in the world. Even if you build a house like a palace, who will live in it in the end? Where are the clients? Therefore, when many consortiums and tycoons saw this advertisement, they just shook their heads and chuckled. No one took it seriously. In the end, only Zhang Tian and a handful of companies participated in the auction in Sidoni. And Zhang Tian's first bid was $10 billion. The other companies did not bid again. Therefore, Zhang Tian took the land use rights of this area with a radius of 50,000 square kilometers for 70 years. The president, the interim president, Professor Ander, and Zhang Tian signed the contract, which was notarized by 2 lawyers. Master Kong, I heard that you're returning to China. I wish you a safe journey. We're looking forward to your return, Sidoni. We can't do without you. After he signed his name, he put away his contract and said with a pleading look, I'll come back. Otherwise, why would I buy this land? Zhang Tian smiled faintly. Interim President Ander and the 2 lawyers got into a Mercedes-Benz. The lawyer named Doug, who just notarized the contract, pushed his black-rimmed glasses and frowned. President Ander, you're really a hound. Don't you think you're too evil? Your name is a hound. Interim President Ander said in surprise. Why would you think that? He was the one who proposed to buy this mountain. Actually, President Kuba had asked someone to survey that area before. There are no minerals in that 50,000 square kilometers. Doug shook his head and said mockingly, also, the mountain environment is very bad. There are no roads. It's impossible to develop real estate. The real rich magnetite is in the other 50,000 square kilometers. It's not the barren mountain that Mr. Jiang wants. $10 billion? That's equivalent to 1/3 of our national income last year. In my opinion, the interim government shouldn't take a single cent. You have to know that this honorable Mr. Jiang is our benefactor. He saved Sidoni from the flames of war. You also know that Mr. Jiang isn't an ordinary person. He's like a god. The interim president shrugged and said seriously, in the eyes of others that place isn't worth a single dollar. But Mr. Jiang will definitely make a name for himself in that place. He didn't say that Zhang Tian had given an even more generous offer. He would personally provide 500 billion Wuxia dollars in military aid to Sidoni. It included building an army, sending people to participate in the war, training military personnel, building military projects, and so on. If he said that, he would probably be scolded even more harshly by Doug. As for the 50,000 square kilometers of rich magnetite, Mr. Jiang said that it was a precious treasure left for Sidoni's descendants. He would never touch it. Mr. Jiang was really Sidoni's savior. In the end, Zhang Tian accepted Zhou Xian's suggestion. Accompanied by Speaker Andrew, he boarded a Wuxia military plane back to Wuxia. After the plane took off, Zhang Tian saw a few ships cruising in Bibu Bay. The sea water was colorful and full of garbage. He couldn't help but frown and ask, Mr. Andrew, what's that? That's a garbage ship from France's New World Renewable Energy Company, a transport ship. Speaker Andrew lamented. They dump garbage on the high seas, but this garbage will flow to Sidoni's Bibu Bay according to the direction of the ocean current. This activity has been going on for 10 years. The fish and shrimp have died, the offshore aquaculture industry is finished, and many residents have been infected with strange diseases and are suffering from torture. French ships. Zhang Tian was in a hurry to return to Wuxia, so he couldn't be bothered with them. He said, Speaker Andrew, you have to deal with it. This is against international sea law. The United Nations Environment Agency will take care of this. Yes, Mr. Jiang. Speaker Andrew quickly took out a small notebook and wrote it down. It was a 14-hour flight. Zhang Tian safely returned to Wuxia. Yanjin Military Airport. Chao Shixiang, Yizhantian, and Tang Hongtu secretly met with Zhang Tian. The meeting room was small, but it was very meaningful. They not only represented themselves, but also the consciousness of the central government of Wuxia. Zhang Tian, are you really leaving? Chao Shixiang said in a deep voice. I'm afraid the United States has already targeted you. I know. Zhang Tian smiled and said, but don't worry, Elder Chao. Unless they use nuclear weapons, they can't kill me. Master Kong, as long as you have Wuxia's citizenship and stand on Wuxia's land, they will never dare to touch you. Yi Shantian said earnestly. Elder Chao, Brother Yi, you should also see that one day my power will suppress the army. Jiang Tian said meaningfully, you understand me and agree with me, but it doesn't mean that others are not afraid of me. Wuxia, no country will allow violence to surpass the military. Unless this country is mine. I cherish our friendship very much. I don't want to sit at the negotiating table one day and fight with each other on the battlefield. Well, Jiang Tian, if that's the case, I won't force you. You have to be careful and keep a low profile. Chao Shixiang pondered for a moment and finally nodded. He patted Jiang Tian's shoulder and said deeply, also, don't forget our friendship and the cultivation of our motherland. I will never forget that I am a descendant of the Yellow Emperor, born and raised in Wuxia. Jiang Tian shook hands with Chao Shixiang, Yi Shantian, and the others, got into a Mercedes-Benz and went straight to Yanjin Yuhua Villa. A grand meeting was waiting for him. This meeting was unprecedentedly grand. The backbone of the Jiang family, the members of the Heavenly Alliance and the 6 major families of Yanjin all attended. Everyone, Sidonie is a hot land. I plan to build a new Sidonie here. On the rostrum, Jiang Tian sat in the middle and glanced at everyone and said in a deep voice, Sidonie. Everyone was dumbfounded. He was doing well in Wuxia. Why would he want to go to Sidonie, a small African country in the middle of nowhere? Jiang Tian signaled with his eyes, and Jiang Chao distributed the stacks of information that he had prepared in advance. Jiang Tian said slowly, if you follow me, I will help you reach the immortal state. If you want to be an official in the secular world, you can be promoted to the president, minister, or mayor. If you want to make money, I promise you will be rich. Your assets will be 10 times, 100 times. More importantly, in the next 100 years, Sidonie will become the most livable country in the world. Reach the immortal state? Grandmaster Jiang is serious. Many experts cried out in surprise, not daring to believe it. That's right. The spirit qi there is dense. I plan to build a new sect, the Taichu sect. Jiang Tian said. When the time comes, I will send all kinds of divine powers to everyone. With a large-scale spirit gathering, everyone will reach the peak of the transcendent state or even the immortal state. Suddenly, Hu Qingtian asked in a hoarse voice. Master Kong, was the battle in Sidonie started by you and Zhang Qianlei? I heard from a few juniors that there was some news on the martial artist forum and the dark web. That's right. Zeus, the professor, and Athena were all killed by Master Kong. As a witness, Lin Fengmian said proudly, that's right. The palace of the gods, the winter soldiers, and Blue Storm were all slaughtered by Grandmaster Jiang as if they were vegetables. Master Kong is invincible. They are the top overlords in the world. Once he said that. The cultivators were all shocked to the extreme, their eyes wide and mouths agape, unable to believe what they were seeing. Why is it that we can develop so well in Sidonie? Many people in the secular world also discussed and couldn't believe it. In short, Master Kong is the real king in Sidonie and King Arthur is Master Kang's godson. As soon as Lin Fengmian said this, everyone was shocked. Chapter 610. What do you mean? This kid brought an African country to play with? In his seat, Jiang Chongqing was dumbfounded. This grandson of his was getting more and more out of hand. Controlling an entire country was simply unbelievable. But Sidonie is very poor and backward. I'm afraid it's not something that can be built overnight. Iron Monarch said worriedly as he flipped through the information. Don't worry. Yi Ziwei, who had studied the information in detail, said, Master Kong now has more than 1.3 trillion Wuxia dollars in his overseas account. Together with the investment, $10 trillion will be poured into Sidonie within a month. It's only 640,000 square kilometers, equivalent to 3 Jiangsu provinces. That's enough. Jiang Tian looked at Iron Monarch and said with a smile, Monarch, I heard that you were a colonel in the Air Force. Your family's military industry is also very good. Do you want to be an Air Force commander or something? I was a colonel in the Air Force, a special class pilot. Tai Ming Monarch knew that Jiang Tian was selecting a new leader. He felt extremely honored and his blood was boiling. He immediately stood at attention and patted his chest loudly, expressing his stance passionately. It's my honor to be able to build Sidonie with Master Kong. I'll be there right away. Tang Xiaozi stood up, put his hands together and said, Master Kong, according to the information, Sidoni has already worshipped you as a primordial deity. Using primordial to represent the heavens, the universe and nature, I think it's very creative. And the first sentence of the Gospel of John says, in the beginning there was Tao with God and Tao is God. Can be seen that everything has its own destiny. Grandmaster Zhang's title as a god is also well-deserved. Tang Xiaozi, you've converted? Jiang Tian asked in surprise when he saw the scar on his head and the monk's robe. That's right. Tang Xiaozi's face glowed with a kind and peaceful light. He nodded like an enlightened monk. In my heart, Master Kong is the reincarnation of Buddha. But in Wuxia, there are many restrictions and I can't erect a statue of you. I can only donate a few temples and carve your appearance on the Buddha statues to comfort myself. With a face full of excitement he said, it's all good now. I'll immediately return to the secular world and join the Sidoni native creation sect. I'll work hard for the rest of my life to spread Master Kang's glorious achievements. I think you and Archbishop Dashio will get along very well. Jiang Tian nodded with satisfaction, then glanced at everyone. What I need to remind everyone is that we are likely to be attacked by military forces such as the United States, Russia, and the European Union. Sidoni is not absolutely safe. It's just a small country in Africa. How did it become a thorn in their side? Someone asked in confusion. Only overlords like Hu Qingtian, who knew Jiang Tian well, showed a hint of worry. Jiang Tian had shown the power of a deity. This was a complete subversion of the existing civilization and order. The United States and other superpowers must be very afraid and want to strangle Jiang Tian and Sidoni in the cradle. Everyone knows that every country is actually suppressing cultivators because they are afraid of the subversion of cultivators, but Sidoni won't. Jiang Tian said with a smile. This will become a paradise for cultivators. This will become another kind of civilization. A society where technology and cultivation coexist. You will guard Sidoni and become heroes, generals and marshals. As soon as these words came out, the hearts of many martial artists and warlocks almost jumped out of their chests. In recent times, Wuxia had launched 2 purges of martial artists. The first was around the time of the founding of the country. Yi Tianren crossed the river on a reed and traveled south with his sword. He chased the Hong sect, annihilated the Green Gang, broke through the 9-story pagoda, and forced the Blue Cloth Society to leave. He killed until heads rolled and blood flowed like a river. The other was in the 90s. Yi Zhantian led the long formation to carry out Operation Drawing Sword and drove Qiaobin away. Many martial arts grand masters died and spellcaster masters went into seclusion. On a global scale, before and after World War II, the pantheon of gods in Europe cooperated with the modern army to kill the werewolves, the kindred and the dark warlocks. The United States even sent out the Black Sea Fleet to hunt them down and kill many immortal state warriors with missiles, tanks and neutron bombs. Why were martial artists killed so miserably when they had the dragon-slaying technique? The reason was simple. Martial artists broke the law with their martial arts. In other words, there was a possibility that they might break the law. The rulers of the secular world were not martial arts masters, but weak human beings. They had no ability to protect themselves and didn't want to live under the threat of powerful cultivators. He might as well kill them all. Only a few who were willing to join them were left. But why did martial artists break the law with their martial arts? Because they didn't have the skills to help the people. Secondly, they had no place to use their martial arts. They could only take by force. But now Jiang Tian's idea solved the 2 problems that troubled the cultivators. The reason why Jiang Tian dared to build such a system was also very simple. Because Jiang Tian was a cultivator, the most powerful overlord in the world. Let's go. We want to live an indomitable life. We want to make a name for ourselves. Members of the Heavenly Alliance, martial artists and spellcasters scrambled to stand up. Their eyes burned brightly as they passionately declared their stance. Very good. Jiang Tian stood up and smiled. And those of you who don't have any cultivation have seen it. You can rest assured. You will have a super strong army to protect you. You can show off in Sidoni. In 1607, a colonizing team of about 100 people built Jamestown on Chesapeake Beach. 300 years later, this group of colonists built the most powerful country in the world, the United States. And I assure you that in 2 years, Sidoni's military power will be comparable to that of the United States. Its comprehensive national power will be comparable to the 5 major countries in the world. And you will be the pioneers and builders of the new Sidoni. You will be recorded in history. Your names will go down in history forever. Zhang Tian's words made everyone's blood boil. They couldn't wait to shout to the sky and raise their arms to cheer. However, it's human nature to relocate. I won't force anyone who doesn't want to go. They raised their hands to vote and quickly reached a consensus to migrate to Sidoni. Almost no one backed out. This was because Zhang Tian always kept his promises and never broke them. They were deeply convinced. This credibility was far beyond that of any country in the world. It was easy to reach a decision, but when it came to implementing it, they realized that it was an extremely huge project. Zhang Tian's personal assets were in cash and were easy to transfer. However, the properties of the Jiang family, the 6 major martial arts families in Yanjing, the Lingnan-Tangs, the Beis and the Taiyais were mostly fixed assets. Real estate could be sold. However, manufacturing machinery and equipment was huge and complicated. This was what the poor and backward Sidoni needed the most. Everyone discussed animatedly, some nodding in agreement. In the end, Zhang Tian made the decision. Yigufeng's shipping company will be in charge of shipping. Use all ships. Also, contact the Nanyang Gua family's shipping group. Gua Lily is still the chairman. The first batch of people, all martial arts families above the Grandmaster level, must rush to Sidoni immediately. The other party may start a war at any time. We must be fully prepared. The second batch is the construction companies of Lin Fengmian, Tang Shaozi and other families. They will start a construction frenzy in Sidoni. In 3 months build a brand new Sidoni. The first batch is the Medicine King Group. They will withdraw from the market and buy all their shares. All production equipment will be shipped to Sidoni. The third batch is the military industry of Yanjing's Zhang family and Taiming Emperor. They must focus on developing Zhang Qing'an's Kuelian weapon system as soon as possible. In addition, the telecommunications industry must be built as soon as possible. In short, the infrastructure and military industry must be built first. In his previous life, he had controlled several cultivation empires and was very familiar with deploying troops, colonizing and establishing a country. Everything was at his fingertips. Zhang Tian's order had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. Everyone started to move. After the meeting, Zhang Tian put his arm around Yi Ziwei's shoulder and said earnestly, "Sister Ziwei, you have to learn international law. Why? I think you are quite suitable to be Sidoni's foreign minister." Female department head, how exciting. Zhang Tian chuckled. Stop joking. The Medicine King Group is enough to give me a headache. You should find someone better. Yi Ziwei said politely, but she was actually tempted. Thinking about it, it was quite good. In fact, Zhang Tian was not joking at all. On his way back, he had been thinking about suitable candidates for the president and cabinet. After much consideration, Yi Ziwei was the most suitable for the foreign minister position. She was the one who promoted the internationalization of the Medicine King Group. Now it had spread to all of East Asia, Southeast Asia and even North America and Europe. In the process, she had accumulated rich business experience and was very good at learning. In Zhang Tian's opinion, management was common. Managing a large multinational company was no different from managing a country. It was just that she had to be familiar with the relevant laws and rules. As for the military, the first person Zhang Tian thought of was Tang Linglong. Although Tang Linglong's cultivation and combat strength were only average among the many members of the Heavenly Alliance. But after all, she had undergone the military training of the Dragon Army and had a certain level of battlefield command ability. Therefore, Zhang Tian called Tang Guizhu, who was attending the meeting, and asked, "Is Linglong back?" "No." Tang Guizhu shook his head helplessly. "How wild. No news?" Zhang Tian frowned. Tang Guizhu hesitated for a moment, then said awkwardly, "She did send a message. She is now a disciple of the semi-hidden Wudong sect. And she is the chief disciple." Seeing Zhang Tian's uncertain face, Tang Guizhu said nervously, "I have scolded you. Grandmaster Jiang, I've scolded her before. She's your direct disciple, and your kindness to her is as heavy as a mountain. How can she randomly join another sect?" But she said that she was looking for cultivation resources for her master. No matter how I tried to persuade her, she would not listen. He sighed deeply. Chapter 6:11. It's okay. It's good that she has made progress. Jiang Tian did not take it to heart. The Wudong mountain was quite powerful and had some foundation. If they treated Tang Linglong well, it would be fine. If they dared to make Tang Linglong suffer, he would kill them all. After the restarting the Heaven Alliance meeting, there were many things to be done. However, Jiang Tian was a strong general and had no weak soldiers. Whether it was Yi Ziwei, Hu Qingtian, Shen Mange, Lin Fingmian, or Qin Zifan, these people were originally existences in charge of a region. Their abilities weren't bad and they were very familiar with how to handle matters. On this day, two uninvited guests, Paris and Hilton, came to Yuhua Mountain Villa to visit Jiang Tian. Paris' makeup was exquisite and her outfit was hot and sexy. One side of her custom-made Gucci dress had a high slit, revealing her white and plump thighs. She wore a white silk blouse with a white collar, revealing her voluptuous breasts. The pinched waist design accentuated her proud figure, causing one's imagination to run wild. Jenny, on the other hand, was much plainer. She wore denim shorts, Converse canvas shoes and a cotton t-shirt. She looked like a little girl from a liberal arts college. Mr. Jiang seems to be even more handsome. However, her pair of beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Jiang Tian, rippling softly, filled with adoration and tenderness. Paris, you're just in time. I have something I need your help with. Jiang Tian crossed his legs, sipped his tea and smiled. I've always wanted to be of service to Master Kong, but I never had the chance. Paris smiled flatteringly. She peeled a grape for Jiang Tian and stuffed it into Jiang Tian's mouth. Where did this vixen come from? You're not serious at all. Is this your job? So flirtatious. This made Shen Mange, who came to serve tea, unhappy. She was secretly vigilant. Jiang Tian could only swallow the grape since it was stuffed into his mouth. He waved his hand and smiled. Paris, I want an aircraft carrier. Hearing this, Jenny was shocked, but Paris was not surprised at all. She laughed and said, Master Kong wants to use it in Sidoni, right? However, the major countries that could produce aircraft carriers would probably not be willing to sell them to Master Kong. Therefore, you need me as your representative. That's right. No problem. I believe that the intelligence agencies of the various countries have already investigated you thoroughly. They might even learn about the friendly relationship between you and the Hilton family. However, the Hilton family has many business allies. In the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Europe, we have friends all over the world. She smiled confidently. I can entrust 3 or 4 shipping companies to act as agents. After changing hands layer by layer, it will definitely fall into your hands in the end. This matter must be settled as soon as possible. Jiang Tian said, Price is not a problem. Of course I know. Master Kong is very rich. But I'll give this aircraft carrier to you for free. Paris smiled. Why? Jiang Tian was slightly taken aback. He smiled and said, Friends are friends, business is business. This is not a small sum. I want to get a few permanent residency certificates in Sidoni for me and my family. Paris said. Paris, you are very good at doing business. Jiang Tian did not know whether to laugh or cry. Yeah, I agree. After this matter was settled, Paris said seriously. Mr. Jiang, you should know that some people in America see you as a thorn in their side. Some people. Jiang Tian was surprised. Shouldn't it be the whole of America? Not all Americans know of your terrifying strength and see you as a threat. Paris smiled and said, The only ones who truly understand your strength are the Langley Building and the Pentagon, which are the CIA and the Department of Defense. Most Americans do not know anything about you. Hearing this, Jiang Tian nodded slightly. The CIA and the Department of Defense, who were in charge of the Hawks, definitely did not have good intentions toward him. They knew a lot of secrets and thought far ahead, thinking that he could overturn the current world order. But they could not reveal this information to more people to gain more support. The reason was simple. Once this top-secret information was exposed, the current world order would collapse even faster. Also, even if they know of your strength, they are not all wary and hostile toward you. For example, the Hilton family is your staunch supporter and follower. Paris said coquettishly. Paris, what are you trying to say? Jiang Tian smiled and asked. No matter what, these Hawks are a real threat. If there are no more variables and the current situation continues to develop, it is very likely that the CIA and the Department of Defense will come to an agreement within 3 months to take action against Master Kong, or more accurately, against Sidoni. Paris's expression gradually turned serious. Blue Storm has already returned in defeat. Do they have any other trump cards? Jiang Tian smiled and said. However, Blue Storm was very powerful in the legends, but reality proved that it was only SOSO. Yes, Mr. Jiang, they still have 2 trump cards. Paris said without hesitation. What? The first trump card, conventional weapons, modern warfare. Paris Hilton said. Jiang Tian smiled and said, Paris, do you think war is so easy to start? In recent years, under the manipulation of the American mining giants and Wall Street, the price of crude oil has risen, and the Baltic Index has continued to rise, which eventually led to the price of iron ore. America has profited a lot. Paris was not like what the media reported. She was not just a vase who liked to flirt with male models and celebrities. In fact, her business acumen and vision were extraordinary. She immediately analyzed the situation tirelessly. And Sidoni is rumored to have a lot of rich magnetite. This is also the reason why the Pentagon and a few mining giants and arms dealers supported Sidoni to get their hands on Sidoni. The Pentagon can continue to use this to persuade the President and Cabinet to take further military action to seize control of Sidoni. You mean they can start a war on the surface to fight for commodity pricing rights, but their real goal is to kill me? Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with sharpness. That's right. Paris nodded and said, it can be said that controlling Sidoni's regime was the Pentagon's established strategy. Your sudden intrusion broke their established strategy, but it also gave them a chance. A chance to kill you and Sidoni together. Jiang Tian smiled noncommittally. The Hilton family was one of the top families in America. They were truly powerful and influential. They had a good relationship with political families like the Roosevelt family. Paris had been around these top nobles since she was young. She was very familiar with the operating procedures of America's political institutions. Her words were of course credible, or at least had a certain reference value. In Jiang Tian's view, the only things that could threaten him were nuclear weapons, intercontinental missiles, and a few other large-scale weapons. And once these weapons were used, it meant the beginning of a war. Whether he was in Wuxia or in Sidoni, once America started a war, America would be strongly condemned by the international community. There would even be demonstrations to impeach the president. America couldn't use weapons of mass destruction, so they couldn't do anything to him. Mr. Jiang, I know you have the awareness of a media war. These days, the new Sidoni government released a promotional video to the world, describing the difficult journey of Sidoni's independence, the living conditions of the people, and the tireless efforts of the Medicine King Group and you to eliminate poverty and disease, for justice and light in Sidoni. Paris's expression was unprecedentedly serious as she said, but this isn't enough, far from enough. America is an expert in media war. They will definitely find an impeccable reason to oppose you and the new Sidoni government. Paris said with slight disdain, no politician in the world is better at acting than them. Yes, I admit that. Jiang Tian nodded and his eyes gradually became serious. Back then, America and Britain worked together to bypass the United Nations and started the Second Gulf War on the pretext that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and secretly supported terrorist acts. But until the withdrawal of Iraq this year, America and the Pentagon didn't find any evidence, but Iraq's king was hanged as a dictator. In fact, all of this was just to protect the supremacy of America's oil resources. Jiang Tian sipped his tea and said, what about the second trump card? You're not talking about Blue Storm, are you? In my opinion, it's just SO. Universe Shield. Paris said word by word. Universe Shield? Jiang Tian was slightly stunned. This was the first time he had heard of this organization. Even Elder Chao and Yi Zhantian had never mentioned it. As far as I know, Blue Storm is a super organization supported by the Pentagon. It's not the strongest in America. After all, the Department of Defense is in charge of conventional warfare. Blue Storm is just a useful supplement. The real ones in charge of special operations and superhumans are actually the Langley Building, which is the CIA. And the Universe Shield, which they fully support, is the headquarters of America's superhumans. It's also a special force that deals with all kinds of strange events. This organization has a long history. No one knows the specific time it was founded. In the long river of history, it has changed its name, purpose, and organization structure several times. Legend has it that Newton, Einstein, the father of computing, von Neumann, the founder of artificial intelligence, and so on were all members of this organization. Currently, the Universe Shield has gathered the world's top scientists. It's said that they excavated a ruin in the Bermuda Triangle in the 1960s and obtained incredible technology from it. They claim that their purpose is to gather the world's power to resist the invasion of super civilizations, including aliens. There's technology from the future in the Bermuda Triangle? Zhang Tian's heart skipped a beat. His eyes were filled with curiosity. Could it be the ruin of an immortal civilization? Chapter 6:12. If the blue storm was equivalent to the Wuxia Long Formation, the nature of the Universe Shield was similar to the most mysterious organization in Wuxia, Hongmeng. It was completely hidden from the world and was the last trump card of the country. They only cooperated with the top of the pyramid of power and were rarely known. They couldn't be exposed to the public at all because once exposed, it would mean the overthrow of the existing order. The Bermuda Triangle. Zhang Tian really wanted to investigate, but he didn't have the time now. The most important thing now was to build Sidoni's base. However, after hearing so much, Zhang Tian looked at Paris in a new light. He smiled and said, "Paris, you know a lot of information. In fact, I was once a level 7 agent at the bottom of the Langley building. I mainly operated in Europe. That's why I had so many scandals." Paris didn't hide anything. She smiled and said, "A level 7 agent is only a level 7 agent. I don't have the authority to access the Universe Shield. I only know the general information. Well, the outstanding female spies and secret agents are almost all female celebrities and socialites." Zhang Tian nodded secretly. He thought to himself that this would explain why Paris looked so unrestrained. This was the best kind of disguise. Paris's eyes flashed with a hint of resentment. She said coldly, "But I've already retired. None of the people at the Langley building are good people." Looks like Paris is also a person with a story. Zhang Tian sighed in his heart but said calmly, "Paris, I agree with what you said. That's right, Sidoni is facing a lot of danger now. However, with your intelligence, you've probably already helped me think of a strategy to deal with it." Being praised by Zhang Tian, Paris's heart was sweeter than drinking honey. It was as if she had received a great compliment. She became even more excited and smiled. "Mr. Jiang, you know that the United States has a system of separation of powers. The Pentagon and the Langley building are responsible to the president, but there's still Congress and the judiciary to suppress them. In fact, I know that there are several real powerful people and political families in the United States who are very dissatisfied with the current president and cabinet, especially the Langley building and the Pentagon. I think we can form an alliance with these people and suppress the hawks who are against you. This is enough for you to obtain a rare opportunity for development. What do you think I should do?" Zhang Tian already had some understanding in his heart. "Mr. Jiang, you've been demonstrating your terrifying lethality and destructive power, but there's an ancient proverb in Wuxia that says the best generals can subdue the enemy without fighting." Paris smiled and said, "I heard from Guo Lily that your medical skills are superb. You once saved her grandfather who was in the last stage of cancer and was on the verge of death. I think it's time for you to show your constructive side." "You mean? Medical skills?" "That's right." Iris smiled. "The current president, Langley Building and Pentagon are serving the old consortia such as Rockefeller, Cleveland, Mellon and so on. These consortia are mainly focused on old mineral resources such as oil. They also include some military-industrial groups. This is the reason why they want the Pentagon to start a war. They want to snatch mineral resources and at the same time sell their arms. However, those old families have blocked the development of the new energy and the new economy. The most obstructed by them is the California Consortium, which focuses on new energy and technology companies." "California Consortium?" Zhang Tian slightly frowned. He was quite unfamiliar with the name. The California Consortium is mainly made up of Silicon Valley elites. They have hundreds of new energy and technology companies under them. They include the well-known Facebook, Microsoft, Oracle and so on. They are a new consortium after World War II in the United States, but their strength is not small. They are enough to compete with the old consortia like Rockefeller. Their values are internationalization. They are against war and trade wars. At present, the California Consortium has a lot of agents in Congress and courts. They have even collected a lot of evidence that is enough to suppress the Langley building in the Pentagon. There's also good news. The spiritual leader of the California Consortium, Mr. Marshall Wooding, was seriously ill a year ago and has been issued a notice of critical illness. Last week I attended a party hosted by him in his private manner. During the party he asked the founder of Facebook, Mike, and others more than once about the news of the god Sidoni. He's very interested in these mysteries, and you, the so-called enemy of the enemy, is our ally. Mr. Marshall and the California Consortium are extremely hostile to the current president. They want to attack the Langley building in the Pentagon. They also don't want to see war. They don't want to see the old oil and mining families further expand. If you cure his serious illness, I think he will definitely tear the face of the Langley building in the Pentagon. So, I hope you can come to the United States. Good. Thank you for doing so much for me. Zhang Tian pondered for a moment and readily agreed. The Hilton sisters secretly visited China and also secretly returned to China. Zhang Tian immediately prepared to leave. But as Zhang Tian expected, when he applied for a visa with the identity of Zhang Tian, the United States Immigration Department did not hesitate to reject the visa. It seemed that the United States Intelligence Agency was not just for show. It was far more powerful than the big families in Wuxia. They had already investigated his double identity thoroughly. But how could this stop Zhang Tian? With an order, he had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. The new ID card and visa under the alias of Tianjiang were quickly processed. The next day Zhang Tian was alone. He took a Boeing 737 from Yanjing Airport to San Francisco International Airport. After more than 10 hours of flight, the plane landed across the Pacific Ocean. As a port city on the west coast of the United States, San Francisco was not cold in April due to the subtropical Mediterranean climate. San Francisco's transportation was very developed, especially air traffic. Could land any type of aircraft in the world. There were countless routes to the major airports in the world. The modern airport was very busy with passengers. In the crowd, an Asian man with a rough appearance and a beard was more than 2 meters tall. He was pulling a simple suitcase through the long security checkpoint. After a strict inspection, a blonde female security inspector in a blue uniform carefully looked at the other party's visa and smiled. Wuxia, it's rare to see someone as tall as you. Yeah, but that doesn't stop me from being a pure Wuxia. The other party winked. If it's possible, I would like to treat you to a drink. San Francisco's Pink Bar's rum tastes pretty good. The female security inspector felt that this Chinese man was filled with a strange charm. She couldn't help but want to approach him and boldly invite him. Although you're very charming, unfortunately I already have a wife. The other party shrugged and seemed to be regretful. Your wife must be very happy. The female security inspector thought of her alcoholic and violent husband and couldn't help but sigh with envy. She stamped him and let him go. The Wuxia man walked out of the airport, picked up the phone and came to the VIP parking area outside the airport. He saw Paris Hilton standing next to a red BMW supercar and looking around. Where's Mr. Zhang? He said he's already here. Hilton glanced around in surprise. Her eyes swept past the tall Wuxia man's face without stopping. I'm here. The man waved his hand. Just as Paris was at a loss, the man's bones shrank, the muscles on his face suddenly contracted and changed. His beard disappeared and he turned into an exceptionally handsome man. This bearded man was Zhang Tian after the transformation. Now this was his true appearance. This is amazing. Paris Hilton was shocked as if she had seen a ghost. America. It's worthy of being the strongest country in the world. Its economy and technology are far superior to other countries. At this time, Zhang Tian's divine sense swept across hundreds of miles and sensed the prosperous city of San Francisco and the world's most high-tech industrial park, Silicon Valley. He couldn't help but sigh softly. 3 years after his rebirth, Zhang Tian stepped on the soil of the world's most powerful country, the United States of America, for the first time. Oh my God, he can transform. It's like magic. No, that's divine power. Sitting in the red BMW supercar and driving out of the airport, Paris Hilton was still immersed in shock. She suddenly had an idea and said excitedly, Master Kong, in fact, you can transform into the President of the United States of America or a senior official of the Department of Defense and end this war. Do you think that there aren't super powerful Americans monitoring and guarding these places? Zhang Tian smiled faintly and said, these little tricks can fool the security personnel, but they can't fool those super powerful people. Yes, you're right. I heard a 10th-level agent of the CIA say something before. Suddenly, Paris's heart skipped a beat. She muttered, rumor has it that there's a blue witch in the Universal Shield who can transform. She once transformed into the president to sign a financial support document for the Universal Shield, but she was still discovered by the super powerful people stationed in the White House. This matter made the president and the cabinet very angry, but because the Universal Shield is too important, the matter was left unsettled in the end. She actually has the ability to transform. I wonder if it's a talent or some secret inheritance. Hearing this, Zhang Tian's heart skipped a beat. The appearance of the gung metal divine body and the secular appearance were naturally formed, but Zhang Tian only had these two appearances. To transform and change into other appearances, the consumption of life essence was no small matter. And it could only be activated at the late stage of qi refinement. But the Universal Shield actually had a super powerful person who could transform at will. It seemed that this organization was indeed stronger than Blue Storm. However, Zhang Tian didn't have to think about this at the moment. He smiled and said, where are we going now? We're going directly to Mr. Marshall's private estate, Deer Leap Wine Cellar. There's a celebrity gathering there tonight. Chapter 613. The San Francisco International Airport was only 22 kilometers away from the city center. It only took half an hour for the car to reach the city through a free highway. There seemed to be no end in front of the road. The factory buildings could be seen in the distance under the endless blue sky and white clouds. There were hills on the side of the road, which were filled with exquisite and cute, colorful villas. San Francisco was a veritable mountain city. The city was built on the mountain and the ground was undulating, but 90% of the roads were straight. It was convenient and beautiful, pleasing to the eye. Tang Xiaozi, Tai Minghuang, Lin Fingmian and the others have led the construction team to Sidoni. I don't know what the construction will be like. I hope Sidoni will be as prosperous as here in the future. Seeing this, Zhang Tian sighed in his heart. After passing through the city of San Francisco, the car drove to the beach. This area belonged to the most beautiful 17-mile Golden Coast of San Francisco. There was a reef beach on one side and mountains and jungles on the other. The scenery was pleasant and the location was excellent. There was also a golf course to watch the sea, swim, surf. Villas of different styles and ages were hidden in the jungle. Nature and culture complemented each other. As the night fell, the BMW sedan drove into a villa built on the mountain and facing the sea. But Deer Leap Wine Cellar was undoubtedly the largest and most luxurious manor. It covered an area of hundreds of acres like a palace. This was Mr. Marshall's seaside villa. Mr. Marshall's wealth and status could be seen from this manor alone that was worth at least $1 billion. Actually, Deer Leap Wine Cellar is a winery. This used to be the winery's vineyard. In the open-air parking lot, Paris slammed the car door and took Zhang Tian's arm. Mr. Marshall Wooding spent $185 million to buy this winery in the 1990s and built a villa here. He likes wine very much. So these grapes were all taken care of by him personally. There were many Cabernet Sauvignon grapes planted on the hillside. They were lush and green and had bloomed, but had not yet borne fruit. On the lawn with a fountain pool, a wine party was being held. Many men and women were drinking beer and eating roast chicken while chatting. They were relaxed and laughed from time to time. There were also a few young people swimming and playing in the pool. It was different from the general upper-class society. The guests here were dressed casually in jeans and t-shirts. Some of them were even wearing beach shorts and slippers. The musicians played very upbeat modern music, sometimes rock, sometimes hip-hop, instead of traditional classical music. But Zhang Tian glanced around and saw many famous people such as the founder of alternative energy vehicles, the chairman of Oracle, the senior CEO of NVIDIA, and so on. The assets of their companies were in the tens of billions. Many of these people are engineer-type founders. They are flamboyant, open-minded, and tolerant. They don't have the complicated etiquette and rules of the old families. While holding Zhang Tian's arm and walking towards a mansion, Paris introduced the place casually. Although Mr. Marshall Wooding is very old, he can get along well with them. In fact, many of them received their first venture capital investment from Mr. Marshall. Hey, don't you want to come over for a drink, Paris? In the crowd, someone raised his wine glass and waved from afar. I'm sorry, I still have important matters to attend to. Paris smiled sweetly and waved her hand. What important matters do you have to attend to? That person complained resentfully. Suddenly, someone noticed Zhang Tian and laughed. Paris, is this your new boyfriend? Is he Japanese or Wuxia? But he is very handsome. He should be from South Korea. Did you see that? Paris ignored that person and shrugged nonchalantly. She said to Zhang Tian, I have such a bad reputation in the US. Any guy who appears around me will be mistaken as my new lover. The two entered a mansion, but they did not enter any room. Instead, they went up to the rooftop. It turned out that there was a more private gathering here. A kind old man with a head full of silver hair was sitting in a wheelchair, holding a goblet. He was chatting and laughing with a few middle-aged men who seemed to have extraordinary bearings. There were also a few maids dressed in black and wearing white aprons standing quietly in the surroundings. On a small round table beside him, there were Havana cigars, a decanter, a bottle of red wine, and a few bottles of wine in a silver ice bucket. Paris, my sweetheart, you came just in time. If you were any later, you would have missed this 1973 Cabernet Sauvignon. The old man was skinny, his skin was dark, and his body was covered with age spots. He was very weak, but his smile was very cheerful. One bottle is in this decanter, and the other bottle is in the Smithsonian National Museum. In the 1976 Paris wine blind tasting, it won against Bordeaux and Brettingen. It made Deer Leap Winery famous. Then I must try it. Paris took a glass of red wine from the maid and took a sip. She swirled the red wine glass and said coquettishly, Uncle Marshall, you are too naughty. You lied to me again. This is a new bottle of Riesling and it should be less than 3 years old. Haha, I didn't lie to you. Paris, you have inherited your father's keen observation and unique judgment. Marshall laughed heartily, looking like an old urchin. Noticing Zhang Tian, the new guest, Marshall smiled and said, Is this handsome young man your new boyfriend? No, Paris and I are just friends. I am from Wuxia. Zhang Tian smiled. Welcome, guest from afar. Please take a seat. The old butler pushed the wheelchair forward. Marshall shook hands with Zhang Tian and then motioned for Zhang Tian to sit down. He smiled and said, When it comes to winemaking, we in California are far behind Wuxia. A very strong white wine. Tastes very mellow. I drank it when I went to Wuxia in the 1990s. I recommend another wine called Erguo too. You can try it. Zhang Tian sat on the black rattan chair and smiled. Wuxia people drink. Marshall gave him a thumbs up and praised, Very impressive, especially the officials at all levels. Mr. Deng told me personally that you have to go through the test of alcohol to be considered a proletarian soldier who is loyal to the party, the country, and the people. Zhang Tian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This must be what the Wuxia officials said to persuade him to drink, but Marshall actually took it seriously. At this time, Paris also introduced a few people present to Zhang Tian. Almost all of them were famous nouveau riche and Silicon Valley giants in the internet, new energy, and new technology industries. But the most eye-catching one was a 17 or 18-year-old girl wearing a t-shirt and denim shorts. She was obviously the most important person besides Marshall. A lot of topics revolved around her. Paris introduced her as Marshall's favorite granddaughter, Rachel. Mr. Wuxia, have you heard of a Wuxia Master Kong? For some reason, the topic was about the most popular Wuxia Master Kong in California's financial circle. Rachel asked curiously. The moment he said that, the whole room went silent. Everyone turned their heads to look at Zhang Tian. Rachel's eyes were wide open, her face filled with curiosity and anticipation. Actually, my surname is Jiang too. Are you talking about me, Miss Rachel? Zhang Tian said calmly. What a boring joke. Are all men in Wuxia so slippery? Aren't they a country of etiquette? Hearing this, Rachel stared at Zhang Tian with disdain and turned her head away. Rachel hated Grandpa's party. In fact, she didn't want to stay for even a minute longer. It wasn't that she wasn't good at socializing, but because of her appearance. She was 19 years old, the best age for a girl. Also, her parents gave her good looks, 1 in a million. Last month, Vogue wanted her to be a cover model. It was too boring. Rachel was a top student at the University of California School of Medicine, majoring in cytology and life sciences. Her goal was to become the best medical scientist and even win the Nobel Prize in medicine. Originally, it was a good thing to be beautiful. Any woman would be proud of it. But with her family background, it was very annoying. At every party, countless top students from Harvard and Stanford, bosses, founders, and engineers from the internet and new technology companies would come to talk to her and try to get close to her. A few of them would pester her at every party and use all kinds of tricks to annoy her. But after all, she was a socialite and had to maintain her poise. Also, her grandpa valued these young people very much, so she couldn't chase them away. In her opinion, Zhang Tian must have said this to get her attention. But this method was too old-fashioned. Hearing her words, Zhang Tian couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. I didn't offend you, why are you giving me such a dirty face? Maybe she's on her period, or she's getting an early update? Zhang Tian thought to himself and looked at Paris in surprise. Paris leaned close to Zhang Tian's ear and smiled slyly. Mr. Zhang, I didn't reveal your identity before. I only said that you're my friend, a Chinese medicine doctor from Wuxia. Paris, you've thought it through. Zhang Tian nodded approvingly. Zhang Tian was now the #1 person in the dark world and had already clashed with Blue Storm. From the fact that the United States refused to give him a visa, it could be seen that the United States was very wary and disgusted with him. If they knew that he had come to the United States, the CIA and the Pentagon would definitely be shocked and even directly attack Sidonie, which was still under construction. Of course, he didn't need to provoke a superpower before falling out. There were too many people at this party and the news might be leaked. It was better to use his identity. At this moment, Mike from Facebook looked at Rachel in surprise. You're talking about Master Kong, who's stirring up trouble in Sidonie. Are you following him too? Chapter 6:14. Yeah, the first news came from Facebook. You must know something about it. Rachel asked. Yeah, I followed it. There is indeed such a person. That's right. Marshall nodded in appreciation, thinking that Mike's information network was pretty good. Mike glanced at Zhang Tian proudly. Zhang Tian sipped the red wine in his glass and ignored him. This guy seemed to be pursuing Rachel and was treating him as a rival in love? Now this Kong Techu is the god that the people of Sidonie believe in. He is the godfather and guardian of the king. In fact, he is the real master of Sidonie. This is too amazing. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Sidonie was a warlord that had been fighting for more than 10 years and was controlled by the United States, Russia, and the United Kingdom. Gradually, an image formed in her mind. As she watched, the sentimental Rachel's beautiful blue eyes began to tear up. It's rumored that Sidonie has more magnetite than Vale. I wonder if it's true? Someone interjected. I've gathered all the information. It's very likely true. Its reserves even exceed the sum of BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto. Mike's eyes flashed with a hint of pride as he glanced at the silent Zhang Tian. This kind of news was rarely known. But he was in the internet industry and had a data intelligence analysis company, so he knew. If he forms a company, it's very likely that his company will become one of the top 100 companies in the world. His assets are in the hundreds of billions. Someone sucked in a breath of cold air. That's true. Everyone sighed with envy. Of course, he was still some distance away from those deep-rooted big families. But families like Rockefeller and Marshall had many family members and companies under them, and most of them were non-listed companies. The wealth they could mobilize was incalculable. However, even if that was the case, Zhang Taichu was still far behind them. The difference between them and Zhang Taichu was too great. A tycoon said with slight disdain. Yes, I think so too. This Kong Taichu is not a good person. He's the same kind of person as Thorpe. He's not in line with universal values. Everyone expressed their agreement. Zhang Tian couldn't take it anymore. Fuck, am I that bad? Why does it sound like I'm a schemer? I don't think so. Suddenly, Rachel grumbled in dissatisfaction. Zhang Tian nodded in agreement. In fact, Sidoni will not develop the mining industry. Instead, he will develop non-polluting medical and longevity industries. This Mr. Jiang you speak of has no intention of treating Sidoni as his private property. He and Sidoni have established a mutually beneficial relationship. Logically speaking, Jiang Tian supported Rachel's point of view. However, little Princess Rachel was prejudiced by first impressions and treated Jiang Tian as a playboy who attracted her attention. At this moment he thought that Jiang Tian was trying to attract his attention. She rolled her eyes at Jiang Tian and snorted disdainfully. How would you know? You're not Kong Teichu. Are you a roundworm in his stomach? Jiang Tian smiled helplessly. I'm Kong Teichu. Rachel fiercely glared at Jiang Tian. Then with a yearning expression she said to herself, I wonder what kind of person this Kong Teichu is. If only I could marry him. She and Rachel had a good relationship. They were like sisters. However, Rachel considered herself as a top student of a famous school and always mocked her for being big-breasted and brainless. Paris was holding back her naughty thoughts. She wanted to see Rachel's shocked and embarrassed look. As for Jiang Tian's attitude, she thought that Jiang Tian wouldn't be angry with Rachel. Rachel was Jiang Tian's fan. It was just that she hadn't realized that her idol was right in front of her. If he's half as capable as Kong Teichu, I'll marry him immediately. Rachel snorted and rolled her eyes at Mike in disdain. Of course. Mike smiled embarrassedly and didn't dare to refute. And he has a close relationship with the army. He's supported by them. Mike's face changed slightly. His mouth moved a few times but he didn't say anything in the end. At this moment Mr. Marshall, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke. As far as I know, this magical Mr. Jiang isn't some bigwig in Yanjing. He's a magical magician. Magician? Everyone exclaimed in confusion. Is he like Harry Potter? Rachel giggled. She obviously took her grandpa's words as a joke. Something like that. Everyone was stunned. They couldn't believe it and started to discuss. Most of them were scientists and engineers. They graduated from famous universities such as Stanford and Harvard. Marshall's face turned slightly stern as he enunciated each word clearly. Everyone was completely speechless. They looked at each other worriedly. Oh no, Mr. Marshall must have Alzheimer's. Looking at the looks of disbelief on everyone's faces, Marshall said to an old black butler who was standing behind him. My old friend, show me the photos I bought from the information peddler. Yes, Mr. Marshall. The old butler went. After a while he came back with a stack of photos and handed them to everyone. He's like the legendary Superman. Grandpa, what's going on? Rachel was even more amazed, yearning and admiring. She couldn't hold back her curiosity. I heard it was like this. Marshall smiled benevolently and spoke tirelessly. His intelligence network was indeed amazing and powerful. What he said was only slightly different from the truth. Looking at the photos in his hand, Jiang Tian frowned and shook his head. These photos were leaked. Seeing Jiang Tian's expression, Rachel suddenly felt that Jiang Tian was pretending. He sneered. Sir, why do you have such an expression? Do you think that the photos collected by my grandpa are fake? Chapter 6:15. No. I just don't think it's worth making a fuss about. Jiang Tian couldn't be bothered with her and said indifferently. Adolescent girls were always so unreasonable. What did you say? It's not worth making a fuss about? Upon hearing this, Rachel almost went mad with anger. She had seen shameless people before, but she had never seen such a shameless person. Everyone here worshipped this amazing Wuxia Master Kong like a god. Even his grandfather held Grandmaster Jiang in high esteem. What about you? You single-handedly defeated the 28-man Japanese Army and Air Force Japan and forced it to bow its head. You single-handedly fought against tens of thousands of warlords and liberated Sidoni. That's not worth making a fuss about? You're just an unknown doctor. What's so great about that? You're really trying to attract my attention. You're willing to do anything. At this moment Mike looked at his phone, stood up and said with joy, Mr. Marshall, Professor George is here. Professor George? The honorary dean of Harvard Medical School, winner of the Nobel Prize in Medicine. The world's top cancer expert? Rachel stood up abruptly and said with a look of admiration, That's right, it's him. Mike said proudly. Professor George has a very rich resume. He graduated from the Royal College of Medicine in the United Kingdom with a doctorate. In addition to his teaching position in the United States, he is also the president of the Royal Swedish Society, the chairman of the judging committee for the Nobel Prize in Medicine, a senior partner of Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and the chief academic consultant of DuPont Chemistry. In the Western medical field, he has a great influence. He can be called the world's top expert in cancer. He looked at Rachel and said flatteringly, I spent a lot of money to invite him this time. The consultation fee is 10 million USD. Oh, I'll transfer the money to you later. Rachel hurried downstairs to greet Professor George. Rachel, that's not what I meant. Mike became nervous. He hurriedly followed him and waved his hand. He waved his hand and said, Mr. Marshall is my angel investor. Without him I would still be coding in the garage. Of course I should pay for this. A moment later, the two of them escorted a white-haired old man with a straight back as they walked over. The old man was in his 50s or 60s. He wore a pair of antique gold-framed spectacles and a thin cashmere suit. There was an old pocket watch in the pocket of his vest. He looked elegant, just like an old gentleman in an English manner. Honorable Mr. Marshall, nice to meet you. In the face of so many world-famous tycoons, Professor George still had a strong aura and was at ease. He didn't look at the others. Instead, he walked straight to Marshall and shook his hand with a smile. Professor George, nice to meet you. I've heard of you. Marshall smiled weakly. When was Mr. Marshall's last checkup? Professor George did not stand on ceremony at all and immediately began the treatment. He looked at Mike and Rachel and asked. Professor George, it was this morning. Marshall's family doctor, Anthony, stepped forward and respectfully handed over a stack of documents. This person's background was not to be underestimated. He was a tenured professor at the University of California. According to the citation rate of his papers, he could be ranked in the top 50 in the international medical field. In terms of medical skills and academic achievements, he could surpass many of the top imperial doctors in Wuxia's Red Wall Imperial Medical Hall. The checkup done this morning would be useful for reference. Professor George looked at the case MRI scans and so on. His face gradually became serious. Seeing that his face was not looking good, everyone gradually became nervous. Rachel didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Professor George put down the documents and pondered for a moment. Finally, he sighed helplessly and said, Do I need to hide Mr. Marshall's condition from him? It's okay, I can take it. Marshall smiled faintly and looked very calm. Professor George said with a pained expression. Mr. Marshall has late-stage leukemia. It has spread to his joints, lymph nodes and liver. Many treatment plans have been ineffective, especially after 3 failed bone marrow transplants. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do. As soon as these words came out, there was a dead silence. The originally cheerful atmosphere was swept away. Everyone's face became very ugly. Rachel's tears instantly burst out and rolled down her face. Professor George was a cancer expert and was especially proficient in the treatment of leukemia. He could be said to be the best in the world. Even his own supervisor admired him. If he said there was no way, then there was definitely no way. Mike frowned and said, Professor George, isn't your cure rate for leukemia 90%? Why is Mr. Marshall's condition? Mr. Marshall has some very strange symptoms such as pain in the wandering state, burning and swelling of the local joints and so on. These symptoms can't be explained by leukemia. His disease is not ordinary leukemia, but an unknown new type of leukemia. Professor George sighed helplessly. At this time Rachel and a few of his family members were already crying. Marshall forced a smile and comforted them. Don't be sad. Coming to this world is like a journey. There will be a day when we have to leave. When Rachel and the others calmed down a little, Marshall pulled himself together and asked with a smile, Professor George, how long can I live? I'm afraid only a month. A month? That's a long time. Marshall patted the armrest of his wheelchair and laughed heartily. I can climb Mount Everest, ski and hunt deer in the forest. I even have time to travel around the world. Mr. Marshall's attitude of transcending life and death is admirable. Professor George was in awe. His face was slightly stern as he praised, In fact, this new type of leukemia is indeed an incurable disease. Grandpa, I'll go with you. Rachel squatted beside Marshall and lay on his knee. She said with tears in her eyes, I'll spend a happy time with you. Just as everyone was in a state of silence, their hearts filled with mixed feelings. Incurable disease? It's just a simple disease like a cold. Is it that difficult to treat? Suddenly, a mocking voice sounded from the corner. Everyone was shocked, and their gazes fell on Zhang Tian in unison. What did you say? This is leukemia. How can you say it's just a cold? How arrogant. Yeah, even Professor George can't do anything. How can you say that? Everyone looked at Zhang Tian in disbelief as they discussed. Originally, Rachel should be happy that someone said that he could treat her grandpa. However, she did not believe Zhang Tian at all. Even Professor George said that a nobody could do it. How could he do it? He obviously wanted to use this method to attract her attention. However, it was a matter of life and death. How could he joke around? Simple. The more Rachel thought about it, the more disgusted she felt. The corner of her mouth twitched. Cancer was a difficult medical problem, not to mention the most difficult type of leukemia that had spread to the lymph nodes. If it were not for the presence of many guests, she would have used the taekwondo she learned in the gym to beat Zhang Tian up. Which medical school are you from? University of California Medical School? Professor George frowned and looked at Zhang Tian. No, I graduated from Wuxia's Jinling Pharmaceutical University. It's a second-tier college. Runda College. Zhang Tian said. I've never heard of it, Professor George shook his head. However, in Wuxia's medical school, the only one that is well known in the world is the medical department of Yenjing University. I remember now. Professor Huang Zhihui seems to be from this school. The family doctor Anthony suddenly realized. Oh, Professor Huang Zhihui used to be my teacher and my colleague. Zhang Tian said calmly. Unexpectedly, the family doctor Anthony curled his lips and said, however, how can Professor Huang Zhihui's medical skills be compared to Professor George's? Huang Zhihui won the Nobel Prize in Medicine, but the judge at that time was Professor George. He was a little annoyed. He raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, as Professor Huang Zhihui's student, you want to challenge Professor George's authority? Are you crazy? Another ignorant junior who wants to challenge authority to satisfy his abnormal vanity. Professor George could only smile helplessly in his heart. In fact, he had encountered this kind of situation many times. In Harvard classes, there were often such smart-ass students who challenged their own academic views. Some of them wanted to show their talent and unique views, some wanted to attract the attention of girls, and some just wanted to post on Twitter to show off. The atmosphere in Harvard was very open. There were often interactions and discussions in class. Most professors encouraged students to think independently and question authority. However, Professor George had never been courteous to such students. He had always shown his profound academic skills, refuted, suppressed, and questioned them repeatedly, making them feel embarrassed. Actually, Professor George was not a narrow-minded person. He allowed constructive discussion and questioning authority. However, medicine was not like philosophy and other social sciences. It allowed speculation and many answers to coexist. In medical science, there was only one correct diagnosis. The best treatment plan was only one. It was either one or the other. Some students, in order to show their talent, found another way. In fact, it was just subversion for the sake of subversion. What was the price? It was a misdiagnosis, an unscientific treatment plan, a delay in the patient's condition, and even a patient who was instinctively cured would die. When he thought of this, he was a little disgusted. He looked at Zhang Tian and said coldly, 3 bone marrow transplants and no hematopoietic stem cells. Do you think there is another way to treat it? Of course. Zhang Tian sipped his wine and said lazily, with my treatment plan, it will be cured in 15 minutes. What did you say? Professor George was stunned. Then he laughed in anger and said coldly, nonsense. Any kind of cancer, even if it's only in the early stages, doesn't need a few months of treatment to kill the cancer cells. 10 minutes? If you can do that, you can win the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Oh no, you should be the chairman of the Nobel Prize in Medicine judging committee. You have no medical knowledge at all. At this moment, Rachel was even more certain. The reason this kid was so pretentious was to attract her attention. However, trying to attract her attention in such a way seemed too stupid. Chapter 616. In her opinion, Jiang Tian's words were too easy to test. Was he not afraid of being exposed? In fact, Professor Huang Zhihui's paper was completed under my guidance. Jiang Tian was calm and composed as he said indifferently, to be exact, 80% of the ideas in his paper were provided by me. Professor George, just because you can't do it doesn't mean that others can't. Please be in awe of the unknown. I've read Professor Huang's paper. You said you made contributions, but why didn't you sign your name on the paper? Rachel was so angry that she almost went crazy. She sneered and said, if you could write such a paper, would you give it to others? Why didn't you write it yourself? Everyone nodded in agreement after hearing her question, especially Anthony, who agreed with her even more. For a medical practitioner, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was the highest honor. Who wouldn't want it? Who would want to give it to others and be a nameless hero? Who would believe you? What's so special about the Nobel Prize in Medicine? I can have as much as I want. Jiang Tian said with a lazy smile. Perhaps it was because of the butterfly effect, but unlike in his previous life in 2009, a female scientist from Wuxia won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. She extracted artemisinin and invented an anti-malaria drug. However, Jiang Tian had thousands of new prescriptions and ingredients in his hands. He could easily solve many difficult and complicated diseases. If he competed for the Nobel Prize, there would be nothing for medical workers on Earth for decades to come. To put it bluntly, his ambition was not in this field. He built the Sunshine Laboratory and the Medicine King Group just to help his mother and sister realize their dreams. But Jiang Tian's words were especially ear-piercing when heard by others. Is he crazy? Anthony was so angry that he wanted to turn his scalpel into a butcher's knife. I have been in the medical field for decades. I spent more than 18 hours in the library every day, reading literature and materials every day, and working in the laboratory every day. I can't even get the Nobel Prize in Medicine after decades of hard work. You can have as much as you want. Rachel was infuriated by this ignorant and arrogant fellow, her body trembling as she looked coldly at Paris. Paris, I don't like him. Dear Leap Wine Cellar doesn't welcome him. Take him away. Otherwise, you won't be welcome here in the future. She and Paris were as close as sisters and had never had an argument. For him to say such harsh words today, it could be seen that he was really angry with Jiang Tian. Rachel, he said that he only needs 10 minutes to cure Marshall. Why don't we let him try? Paris smiled sweetly. This damned lass thinks that she's a top student of a famous school and always laughs at me for being big-breasted and brainless. This time I'll make you brainless for once. Is there a need to test such nonsense? Rachel snorted in disdain. He was just an idiot who wanted to attract her attention. Dr. Jiang, how do you plan to treat him? Professor George asked with a smile. Chinese medicine. Traditional Chinese medicine. The family doctor, Anthony, immediately sneered in disdain. He said with disdain, traditional Chinese medicine is nothing but superstition and witchcraft to deceive the villagers. How can it cure him? Hearing this, Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with coldness. Let's make a bet. If I can cure him with traditional Chinese medicine, will you eat shit? Vulgar. If you can cure him, I'll eat shit. The family doctor, Anthony, was so angry that he almost exploded on the spot. In Luiyue Wine Cellar, in such a high-end upper-class society, how could he say such words? However, what was even more depressing was that he actually agreed to this boring bet. Where was the demeanor and cultivation of a scholar? Alas, he had been led into a ditch by this kid. He was really too infuriating. Professor George was slightly solemn and said, Dr. Jiang, I don't think this is possible. I also have a certain degree of understanding of traditional Chinese medicine. It is said that the effect of traditional Chinese medicine is very slow. Compared to Western medicine, it needs a longer time. There is an ancient proverb in Wuxia, words are no proof, seeing is believing. Jiang Tian's hand shook, took out an exquisite medicine bottle, got up and put it on the tea table. If Mr. Marshall takes this pill, he will be cured in 10 minutes. You can test for cancer cells and other indicators. You really know how to act. You even took out the props. This bottle is quite beautiful. Rachel said in disbelief. Haha. Jiang Tian laughed. If it weren't for Paris, he wouldn't have bothered to deal with the Marshall family. He also didn't bother to say anything. He had already taken out the pill, the opportunity was already in front of him. Whether he cherished it or not, whether he had the foresight or not, it was up to him. What? Guilty conscience? You can't pretend anymore. It's not too late for you to scram now. In Rachel's eyes, this expression was a sign of guilt. You're crazy. If Mr. Marshall wants to eat it, hurry up. If not, hurry up and say something. Don't waste my time. Zhang Tian was speechless towards this girl. As soon as they met, she targeted him as if he had molested her. But I've never seen you before. Since you don't know me, why are you purposely making trouble for me? You dare to scold me. Do you believe that I'll call the bodyguards to beat you up? Rachel looked at Zhang Tian with hatred. She thought that after being exposed, this kid would be so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. She didn't expect this guy to call her crazy. You're the crazy one. You're sick all over. Rachel's full chest heaved violently. She was so angry that she was about to explode. Oh, I understand now. She must have read the popular Wuxia novels about domineering CEOs. She's poisoned too deeply. Now that online novels have been translated out to sea, she might also know Chinese. Zhang Tian suddenly had a flash of inspiration and found the reason. He looked at her with pity and couldn't help but shake his head. He said sincerely and earnestly, "Don't think that I'll notice you and fancy you just because you're making trouble for me. I'll tell you clearly that this idea is very childish. This kind of trick will only have the opposite effect." The more Zhang Tian thought about it, the more he felt that it made sense. Shen Mange, Li Jinju, the Hilton sisters, and even Sasaki Haisha all had ulterior motives towards him. Tang Linglong, that wretched girl, had already confessed to him and ran away from home. It seemed that Rachel was the same, but she had taken an unconventional approach. Although you're far from Qing'er and Ling Er in terms of looks, you're not ugly. Why are you pestering me? Zhang Tian's heart was extremely melancholy. In fact, accepting Ling Er made him feel very uneasy. He originally only wanted to be with Ling Er for the rest of his life. Now there were so many women staring at him. It was really annoying. Zhang Tian was extremely depressed in his heart. Being chased by women was actually not a good thing. As a reborn person, the Pear Mountain was huge. Thinking of this, he sighed helplessly. I only like gentle and elegant women. The most important thing is that I have a wife. I definitely won't like you. Just give up. I like you? You want me to give up? Rachel's body swayed and she almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Next to her, Mike had already spat out a mouthful of red wine and slapped his thigh with laughter. Damn, this competitor basically had no hope. You're too narcissistic. You're an egomaniac. I hate you to death. I'd be crazy if I liked you. Rachel was so angry that she danced. You're the one who's bluffing to attract my attention, okay? When did I become the one who likes you? Fuck you. Also, what's the meaning of your pitiful gaze? Am I pitiful? I'm the little princess of the Marshall family. The shares that I hold are worth billions of dollars. You don't know how many people are chasing after me. Do you think that no one wants me? Why would I like you? That's hilarious. Rachel gritted her teeth and her face kept twitching as if it was going to explode. Let me try. Marshall did not speak from beginning to end. Instead, he watched the conversation between Zhang Tian and his granddaughter with a half-smile. At this time he picked up the medicine bottle and unscrewed it. He poured out a black pill into his palm. This pill smells so bad. Could it be poisonous? The moment the pill was poured out, Rachel instantly smelled a foul odor. She could not help but cover her nose and quickly stopped him. Grandpa, don't eat it. We haven't even tested the ingredients yet. What if you eat it and hurt your body? Rachel, do you think my body can get any worse? Even if it's poisonous, what's the difference between dying now and dying 30 days later? Marshall smiled faintly. Rachel looked at Professor George and the family doctor Anthony, hoping that they would help her. Unexpectedly, the family doctor Anthony did not say anything. Who would dare to poison Mr. Marshall? That would be suicide. This Wuxia kid probably wants to climb up the social ladder. At best, it's just an ineffective drug. George's eyes flickered twice, but he did not stop him. He wanted to give Zhang Tian a good blow and taunt after the pill was ineffective. Damn it, it would be best if Marshall was eaten to death. Then the Marshall family would send this Wuxia doctor to prison. Life imprisonment. This kid is too infuriating. Marshall popped the pill into his mouth, took a bottle of mineral water from the maid and drank it. After Mr. Marshall took the pill, the entire terrace was filled with an eerie silence. In the manor, the sound of music and laughter on the lawn could be heard from afar. It was so faint that it seemed to be in another world. Everyone stared at Marshall in silence as if waiting for something to happen. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Time passed slowly. However, 5 minutes had passed and there was no obvious change in Marshall. Mike shook his head helplessly and whispered, "He's just a liar. Do you really think there will be a miracle?" Ouch, my stomach hurts. At this time, Marshall suddenly clutched his stomach and screamed. He was in so much pain that his whole body convulsed. Large drops of sweat seeped out of his head, and the blood vessels on his forehead throbbed. He even opened his mouth wide and panted heavily as if he was about to fail. Suddenly, everyone became nervous. Chapter 6:17. Mr. Marshall, what's wrong? The family doctor, Anthony, walked over nervously and examined Marshall. There's something wrong with this pill. Damn Wuxia, you'll have to take responsibility. Professor George stood up and pointed at Xianxia. You're finished. The Marshall family will sue you. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Pyrese, who is he? You've killed my grandfather. Rachel was flustered and exasperated. She rushed in front of Xianxia and Paris and shouted angrily, "I need to go to the toilet." Suddenly, Marshall stood up with difficulty. Then he walked faster and faster. He was sweating profusely as he ran to the toilet. At this moment, Rachel was stunned. She said in disbelief, "Did Grandpa stand up just now? He's been in a wheelchair for half a year and has never stood up successfully." Before a person dies, their mental and physical strength will have some extreme reactions. Professor George said worriedly. The family doctor, Anthony, was nervous. He ordered a few assistants. Move the equipment to Mr. Marshall's bedroom immediately. I want to give him a full checkup. The assistants quickly got ready. They knocked on the door and entered Marshall's bedroom. The family doctor, Anthony, stepped forward and asked, "Mr. Marshall, how do you feel?" "I had diarrhea, but it's strange. I feel relaxed now. The pain has disappeared." Marshall's face was filled with ecstasy and amazement as he said, "I feel like I'm completely healed." "Mr. Marshall, I want to give you a full checkup," Anthony requested. "No need. I can feel that I've completely recovered." Marshall walked to the door. He wanted to go to the rooftop and thank the miracle doctor Wuxia who had cured him. "No, to be cautious, I think we still need to do a thorough checkup." Professor George did not give up. All right. Marshall was helpless. He could only let them examine him. In fact, he was also curious about the current situation. He had to admit that America's medical equipment was much more advanced than Wuxia's. X-ray, MRI, blood analysis, infrared sensors and other equipment were all portable and portable. Moreover, they were quickly analyzed by computers and the results were almost all produced within a few minutes. He even saw a test strip for cancer cells that could analyze the number of cancer cells just by extracting a drop of blood. However, Wuxia's TCM doctors could make accurate judgments with just a few fingers. To be able to cure diseases with the simplest materials such as plants, stones and silver needles, wasn't this a civilization that was even more advanced and closer to the cultivation world? Soon the first test result came out. Anthony, the family doctor, was staring at the computer screen. His face was full of surprise as he muttered softly, The amount of hemoglobin is actually normal." He then dragged the mouse and clicked a few times in a row. The more he looked, the more his face changed. The swelling of the spleen and lymph nodes has also disappeared. And how is this possible? What? Has Mr. Marshall's condition worsened? Professor George walked over and said with slight anger, "A nameless Wuxia kid relied on his relationship with the Hilton family to gain fame by deceiving the world." "No, Professor George, come over and take a look." Anthony, the family doctor, hurriedly interrupted when he heard the other party's angry words. He turned the computer around and gave up his seat. This information must be preserved well. It will be the most powerful evidence in court." Professor George lowered his head and took a look. However, after just one glance, his expression was the same as that of the family doctor, Anthony. His eyes suddenly widened. But how is this possible? He flipped to the second page. It's actually page 3. How is this possible? Page 4. Oh my God. His face was full of shock and disbelief. His hands did not stop moving as he clicked the mouse quickly. Soon he finished reading more than a dozen examination indicators. Professor George's eyes almost fell to the ground. He was full of disbelief. How is this possible? The cancer cells have all disappeared. The shadow of the tumor is gone. All the indicators are healthier than a healthy person. Yes. At least from the examination, Mr. Marshall is completely cured. But it's only been less than 10 minutes. What kind of medicine would have such a good effect? Anthony, the family doctor, was stunned. This doesn't make sense. Could it be that the equipment is broken? Professor George scratched his head and finally found an explanation. But it's impossible for more than a dozen instruments to break at the same time. Anthony, the family doctor, felt that Professor George's explanation was very silly. So Mr. Marshall is really cured. Professor George's face was red. He held back for a long time before he could say this. He had always been known for his rigor and was admired by many people. However, today, this was a slap in the face. It was painful. Clearly, this kid had only given him a smelly pill as if he was playing with it. But he had actually cured him. Could it be that this kid's medical skills had surpassed his, or was he an alien? However, he had just humiliated and ridiculed him, saying that he was arrogant and ignorant. But if this matter were to spread, he would not be able to survive in the medical field. Professor George felt his body stiffen as if he was constipated. Professor George, I don't think I agreed to the bet just now, right? I don't remember clearly. Anthony, the family doctor, asked nervously with cold sweat on his forehead. You agreed. Marshall, Professor George, and a few of the assistants said in unison. Then why is your mouth so cheap? Why did you agree to this bet? I really don't want to eat it. Can I go home first? Anthony, the family doctor, felt his head swell. He wanted to slap himself a few times. All right, Anthony, I don't think Mr. Jiang will be so stingy. Let's not keep our guests waiting. Mr. Marshall patted him on the shoulder and strode out of the door. Mr. Marshall, how can you be so sure? You don't even know him. Anthony wanted to cry. Though in fact we all know him. Mr. Marshall's lips curled into a mysterious smile as he said calmly. To the people on the balcony, the 30-minute examination seemed very long and torturous. Everyone was extremely nervous. God bless, I hope Mr. Marshall is fine. He is my angel investor. Without him I wouldn't be where I am now. Has Mr. Marshall's will been written? Who is the successor? This Dr. Wuxia is too despicable. If Mr. Marshall's condition worsens, I will definitely send him to federal prison. They are here. Seeing Mr. Marshall striding over, everyone stood up in a daze. Grandpa, how are you feeling? Rachel went up and grabbed his hand as she asked nervously. She did not forget to glare coldly at Jiang Tian. The reason why she did not follow them down was because she was worried that Jiang Tian would run away and escape responsibility. But this kid did not have any intention of leaving. He was chatting happily with Paris as if no one was around. He was really ruthless in order to attract her attention. Now he still did not admit that he was a liar and a quack. Was he not afraid that she would break his legs? I'm fine. Mr. Marshall smiled. Grandpa, what did you say? Rachel suspected that she was hallucinating. Fine. What do you mean? Everyone was dumbfounded and could not believe it. Mr. Marshall has recovered. He was treated by this great Dr. Wuxia with traditional Chinese medicine. Professor George and Anthony bowed respectfully to Jiang Tian to show their highest respect. Let me tell you, my lawyer has already prepared the indictment. Mike was still pointing at Jiang Tian to threaten him when he suddenly saw this scene and was shocked. He fell to the ground with a thud. How is this possible? Rachel could not believe it. She rolled up her grandpa's trousers and was even more shocked. How is this possible? She screamed. She found that the redness and spots on the joints had all disappeared. The shrunken muscles were like balloons that had been blown up and were filled with healthy, rosy muscles. He's really fine. This Dr. Wuxia's medical skills are really amazing. This is the test result. Anthony gave Jiang Tian a thumbs up. His face was full of admiration, respect, flattery and flattery. He also sent out copies of the test results in advance to everyone to endorse Zhang Tian's amazing medical skills. He was really afraid that Zhang Tian would mention the matter of eating shit again. Look, my attitude when I admit my mistake is very good. Let me go. This is a miracle. No, miracle is not enough to describe it. This is a miracle. In fact, everyone did not need to look at the test results to gradually feel the earth-shaking changes in Marshall. His originally haggard and pale face became rosy and healthy. His originally weak voice became full of vigor. Even his dim eyes became sparkling and his hunched back straightened. Is he really fine? Looking at the test results, Rachel's little face was first filled with disbelief, then shock, and she had to believe it. His medical skills are actually so amazing. Looking up and seeing Zhang Tian's half-smile, Rachel's little face suddenly turned red. She was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Previously, she had been ridiculing him for having no medical knowledge, saying that he was fishing for fame and wanted to chase him out. However, he actually cured her grandpa's leukemia in 10 minutes. Is he really fine? This test can't be wrong, right? Holding the test results with trembling hands, Mike's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Cancer and the most difficult to treat lymphatic leukemia late stage cured in 10 minutes? Motherfucker, this is too heaven-defying. Is he even human? Chapter 6:18. Mike looked at the checklist for a long time before he raised his head and looked at Zhang Tian in disbelief. Then he rubbed his eyes and was shocked. The situation is not good. Why is Rachel chatting with him? Her eyes are full of admiration and her smile is so bright. Rachel has never treated any young talent like this before. Oh my God. He even kissed his cheek. Not good. She took out her phone. Is she leaving her contact number? She even made an appointment? Mike immediately felt his head turn green, and a sense of danger surged in his heart. This is not good. This is not good. However, Mike also had his own advantages. After thinking about it in his heart, he quickly walked up and raised his wine glass towards Zhang Tian and smiled. Mr. Zhang, your medicine is very valuable. Why don't I invest in you? The first investment is $100 million. I only need 20% of the shares. His manners were elegant, but he was superior and had a sense of superiority. Mike thought that this offer was very tempting. It was equivalent to giving the other party a valuation of $500 million or 4 billion Wuxia yuan. It was much more than many internet companies. He had two purposes for doing this. One was to show Rachel his wealth. He has medical skills, but I am an internet entrepreneur. The other was to force Zhang Tian to bow down. When entrepreneurs met venture capitalists, which one of them would not bow down to them as if they had met the god of fortune? Thank you, but I don't need it. Zhang Tian was very busy. A group of people surrounded him and chatted. They flattered him and did not have the time to talk to him. Mike, do you think a person like Mr. Jiang who does not care about fame and fortune will care about money? Another tycoon said righteously. We, Pfizer, are willing to invest $1 billion and only need 20% of the shares. Mike was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Brother, I didn't do anything to you, right? How can you undermine me like this? Can't you see that I just want to show off in peace? I'm sorry, I really don't need it. Zhang Tian frowned and said to the tycoon. Mr. Jiang, is your product unable to be mass-produced? Or are there any side effects? If that's the case, it's very regrettable. Mike was stunned at first, then he smiled reservedly and hit the nail on the head. If you can't mass-produce, you'll still be poor. Even if you were to sell one pill a day, how much could you sell it for? Not every tycoon had cancer. Most of the patients were ordinary people. They still needed to mass-produce it for them. If there were side effects, it would be even more troublesome. Maybe the Marshall family will keep you. Even if there are no side effects, it can be mass-produced. But I don't need investors. Zhang Tian glared at him. Does this person know how to speak? The Medicine King Group's cash flow was abundant. It was a veritable unicorn and cash cow. There was no need for financing or listing. Now that it's finally delisted, I'm still giving you shares? You're dreaming. Too lazy to pay attention to him, Zhang Tian turned his head and continued to discuss with Rachel the differences between Chinese and Western cultures, the interesting things about college life, and the magic of Chinese medicine. Seeing this, Mike was so angry that his nose became crooked. He frowned and said, "Mr. Jiang, products are products and operations are operations. A good product might not necessarily be able to make money. There's a lot to learn about this. For example." "Mike, that's enough." Seeing that he was still blabbering on, Paris frowned and said impatiently, "I'm not going to tell you anything. Mr. Jiang is the only heir to Wuxia's Medicine King Group. South Korea's Daoist Pharmaceutical is also one of his assets." Actually, she had good intentions. Zhang Tian was a malefic star, someone who could slaughter entire cities and wipe out entire clans at the slightest provocation. He was an existence that could defeat an army of 10,000. If Mike continued to pester him, Zhang Tian might kill him out of anger and he would not even know how he died. After Chin Fan said that, the entire room went silent. Everyone looked at the young man in front of them in shock. They felt like they were looking at a monster. Medicine King Group, Daoist Pharmaceutical. They were the biggest pharmaceutical companies in East Asia. Even though they were far away, they had heard of them. His assets should be about 400 billion Wuxia, which is equivalent to $60 billion US. Most of the tycoons in the room were worth less than that. As for Facebook's Mike, his shares in Facebook were no more than $6 billion US. This Mr. Jiang from Wuxia is rich, handsome, and has excellent medical skills. He's perfect. Mike, who had been trying his best to outperform Zhang Tian, suddenly felt a burning pain in his chest. He stood there stunned. His body was shaking violently and he wanted to cry. Shit. His personal wealth is 10 times more than mine. If I knew this would happen, I would not have acted so pretentious. Now, not only did I fail to act pretentious, I became a fool. Where's the crack in the floor? Why is the floor so perfect? There's not even a crack in the floor. I want to crawl into it. Who would have thought that this was only Jiang Tianming's assets? The assets he got from Nanyang's Guo family and Yanjin's Bai family had never been shown to the public. He is the heir to Medicine King Group. He defeated Korea's top miracle doctor Park Yong-tae and defeated Dr. Jiang. Oh, I remember now. No wonder his medical skills are so good. Professor George and Anthony were both excited. It was as if they had seen a god. "That's right, it's me," Zhang Tian said with a smile. "Medicine King Group wants to expand into the American market. Please help us." Of course, of course. This is our honor." The two of them nodded in agreement. "Dr. Jiang, this is my son. He is an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School. His academic skills are good. Dr. Jiang, please be his teacher and teach him some Chinese medicine skills." Seeing that Zhang Tian seemed to be in a good mood, Anthony pulled a young assistant over and said tentatively, "As long as you are willing to accept him, I can also be your student. Think about it, all the tenured professors and assistant professors in Harvard will become your students. I guarantee that you will be famous. Your products will also be promoted in the United States soon. Professor Anthony, how shameless can you be? You want to buy one get one free?" Professor George strode forward and reprimanded sternly, "What's wrong? Dr. Jiang, ignore him. This person has always been unruly. Look at me, cough cough. I am the chairman of the Nobel Prize in Medicine. I also want to be your student." He lowered his voice and said mysteriously, "My position is very beneficial to the promotion of Chinese medicine. Actually, you may not know that the Nobel Prize evaluation is very cliquish. What's there to fight about? You are all in your 60s and 70s, old enough to be his grandfather. You are all muddle-headed, yet you still want to be his disciple. Do you still want your dignity?" Rachel was furious. She did not expect that her mentor and idol would be so humble. Professor George and Anthony blushed when they were mocked by Rachel. Indeed, they were too old and their academic research had stopped. They were basically living off their savings. It was unrealistic for them to have any achievements in Chinese medicine. Everyone gave Rachel a thumbs up and silently praised her. See that? Miss Rachel is still the one with courage, vision, and grace. She saw the problem at a glance. But who knew that before they finished praising Zhang Tian, Rachel shamelessly moved to Zhang Tian's side and held onto his arm as she said with a fawning smile, "Professor Jiang, look at me. I'm still very young, only 18 years old. Can I be your disciple? Also, the United States is very open. It has never prohibited student-teacher relationships. Everyone was speechless. Where was the bottom line? Where was the bottom line? Zhang Tian smiled and said, "We'll talk about it later. I rarely accept disciples." I suddenly feel that Rachel and Mr. Jiang are very compatible. The silver-haired old butler whispered in Marshall's ear. They're not compatible. Rachel doesn't deserve him. I'm afraid Rachel will have to work hard to pursue him. Mr. Marshall shook his head gently. His deep eyes shone brightly. He was more and more convinced of his deduction. Seeing this scene, Mike was suddenly shocked. He clenched his fists tightly and secretly swore in his heart, "Damn it. No, I'm going to be dumped by Rachel. I have to go to Las Vegas and find a few ruthless people from the Big Circle gang and the Vietnam gang to threaten her." Humph, so what if his medical skills are good and he's rich? This is the United States after all. He'll definitely run away in fear. At this time, Marshall stepped forward and smiled. "Mr. Jiang, actually, you and Iris don't have to hide your honorable identity. These are my best allies and the most valued juniors. They will never betray me. Mr. Marshall, is your intelligence network really that powerful?" Jiang Tian shook his wine glass and smiled. Only on the dark web could there be a slightly clearer video of him. Even so, his face couldn't be seen clearly. The videos and photos circulating on the internet were very blurry. Marshall definitely couldn't recognize him. In the United States, only the top management of the Pentagon and the Langley building knew about his double identity. "No, I rely on my reasoning and analysis skills." Marshall reached out his hand enthusiastically and smiled. "If I'm not wrong, you are Kong Taechu." At this point there was no need to hide. Jiang Tian shook Marshall's hand and smiled. "Sorry, because the Pentagon is watching me, I have to be careful." Clang. Mike fell down. He was Kong Taechu. Did he have to be so ruthless? Not only was he rich enough to rival a country, but he was also a terrifying existence that could defeat tens of thousands of soldiers and control the political situation in Sidonie. He wanted to threaten him just now, but fortunately he didn't. Otherwise, he would probably tear down Facebook and even the entire Silicon Valley and San Francisco. "You are Kong Taechu." Rachel's beautiful eyes widened in surprise and joy. She didn't expect her idol to come to her manner. It was like a dream. But the next moment she was so angry that she was dancing. "Iris, damn it, why didn't you tell me earlier? You got me into trouble. Do you still want to be his girlfriend? But he's really married and their relationship is very good." Iris smiled mockingly. "Who told you to say that I'm big-breasted but brainless? You're finally brainless for once. If he's not married, I definitely won't have a chance." Rachel's face was full of melancholy. She regretted leaving such a bad impression on her idol. Chapter 619. "Mr. Jiang, let's talk in my study." Marshall invited him with a smile. "Sure." Jiang Tian gladly agreed. "Excuse me, everyone. Rachel, help me entertain everyone." Marshall politely apologized to everyone, then accompanied Jiang Tian into his study. Only Iris could accompany him. The other tycoons had no right to do so. In terms of wealth and influence, Jiang Tian, as the king of Sidonie, could even overwhelm Marshall. Among the many people present, only Marshall had the right to speak to Jiang Tian as an equal. The others were too far behind. "Mr. Jiang, thank you very much for curing my leukemia. There's an old saying in Wuxia, return the favor. Is there anything I can do for you, Mr. Jiang?" Marshall was swift and decisive. He went straight to the point and asked with a smile. "On the battlefield in Sidonie, I killed Thorpe and the professor from Blue Storm. You should know that he was supported by the Pentagon and the CIA." Jiang Tian smiled. "I think they might make a move against me. To be exact, I'm not worried about them making a move against me. They can't do anything to me. But I and my assets are preparing to move to Sidonie. I'm worried that the people of Sidonie will be attacked by America. After all, America has always liked to start local wars. You're planning to move to Sidonie. Are worried about the safety of the people of Sidonie?" Marshall couldn't help but feel deep respect for Jiang Tian. "Yes, I hope that I can bring freedom and well-being to the people of Sidonie, not bring disaster to them." Jiang Tian nodded. "But it's obvious that the politicians in the Pentagon and Langley building won't agree. They're just a bunch of mobs." Marshall shook his head in disdain. Giving freedom to others and protecting your own freedom are both noble causes. Marshall uttered a famous quote from President Lincoln and sighed deeply. And in order to obtain freedom we must break the shackles. But ironically, the shackles of the Sidoni people were imposed by the superpowers such as the United States and the United Kingdom, which advocated freedom and democracy. He took a deep breath and said emotionally, Mr. Jiang, I admire your character, your actions, and even your ideals and beliefs. I am willing to support you. Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Jiang Tian nodded. I can guarantee that the United States will not launch any military operations against Sidoni for at least a year. Marshall laughed heartily and said, Yes. The MPs and judges under my control will make those bastards in the Pentagon and Langley building lose face. 1 year is enough. Jiang Tian stood up and shook hands with Marshall. He said solemnly, I thank you on behalf of the suffering people of Sidoni. Then Jiang Tian introduced his idea of building Sidoni and the longevity industry to Marshall. Marshall was very interested and he immediately said, Mr. Jiang, if you need construction funds, the entire Marshall family will help you with everything we have. Also, I hope that my family can obtain a permanent residency certificate and become the first batch of immigrants to invest in Sidoni. Why not? Jiang Tian smiled and said, This is also an honor for me and the people of Sidoni. This secret meeting lasted for a full hour. The atmosphere was very harmonious and both sides reached a consensus on many aspects. After the meeting, although Marshall tried to persuade Jiang Tian to stay, he still insisted on leaving. As for how Marshall would deal with the politicians in the Langley building and the Pentagon, Jiang Tian did not care. Marshall was the real elite of the United States. He had a very deep foundation and connections. He had representatives in Congress and the courts. He could surpass the restrictions of the United States laws and rules. Or rather, he could play with the United States laws and rules. He had his own means. When he returned to China, Jiang Tian did not choose to take a plane. Instead, he took a cruise ship of the Hilton family and set off from San Francisco to Tianjin port, which was adjacent to Beijing Wuxia. Fortresses are always breached from the inside. The hawkish generals and politicians in the Pentagon and Langley building may not realize that a force that is enough to cut off their political careers has been formed. When they are in disarray, I will be able to carry out my great migration and build up Sidoni in a hurry. On this day, Jiang Tian was lying on a deck chair, comfortably enjoying the warm sea breeze of the Pacific Ocean. He sipped freshly squeezed juice and basked in the sun, thinking leisurely. This meeting with the Marshall family was very fruitful. In addition to forming an alliance with the Marshall family to form a force to clamp down on the Pentagon and Langley building, Jiang Tian also left dozens of jade talismans and a large number of pills for the Marshall family. The cost of these things was only a few 100,000 yuan. But the effect was amazing. At least they could see the tip of the iceberg of Sidoni's longevity industry. The temptation of health, longevity, and even immortality was something that even immortals could not resist, let alone ordinary humans. Presumably, the Marshall family would be able to win over a large number of supporters and even attract them to migrate to Sidoni. Mr. Jiang, the Hawaiian Islands are in front of us. Do you want to go sightseeing? A handsome captain walked up to Jiang Tian and respectfully bowed and suggested. The Hawaiian Islands? Jiang Tian was slightly taken aback and looked up. He saw a lush island in the sky. 8 large islands and 124 small islands dotted the sea like stars in the sky. Modern skyscrapers and villas complemented the tropical forest. Oh right. Jiang Tian suddenly thought of something and frowned. I heard from Yi Zhantian that the base of the Big Circle Gang Big Turtle Island is in this area, right? Before this, Jiang Tian didn't even care about the Big Circle Gang. They only had a few thousand private soldiers and a few transcendent grandmasters. Jiang Tian could easily wipe them out. Jiang Tian didn't even need to do anything. Huaqing Tian was more than enough to deal with them. But things were different now. Saroni had a lot of things to do. He lacked both money and labor. You guys keep going, I will be back soon. Jiang Tian cracked a smile and waved his right hand. A giant black sword floated in the air. Jiang Tian took a step forward, and with a shake of his body, the flying sword and him suddenly disappeared. In the next moment he reappeared a few kilometers away. He can fly. He really is an immortal. The captain's body trembled and his eyes almost popped out of his head. Before they departed, Perels had told him that Mr. Jiang was a real immortal and that he should respect him. However, the captain didn't take it to heart. Mysterious culture was popular in the East, but it was nothing more than a backward superstition. It seemed that Perels had been fooled by this Wuxia kid. Along the way, Zhang Tian didn't use any divine powers. He either sat cross-legged or read a book under the sun. He looked just like an ordinary tourist. This made the captain even more certain of his judgment. After seeing this shocking scene, the captain realized that Perels was right. Zhang Tian stepped on the flying sword and flew a few hundred meters into the air. He covered the islands of different sizes with his divine sense. These islands were beautiful. On the golden beaches, coconut trees swayed gently and seagulls soared in the sky. There were many tourists swimming and surfing in the shallow waters. The largest island was only 30 miles in radius. Zhang Tian could cover it with his divine sense. Of course, Zhang Tian already knew that Big Turtle Island was not a large island. It was a small island, which made it easier for him to find it. Here it is. Zhang Tian soon found a small island with a radius of 5 to 6 kilometers, dozens of kilometers to the north of the Hawaiian Islands. There were many bunkers and sentry posts of different sizes on the island. There were thousands of private soldiers patrolling and guarding. A 100-meter-tall mountain was almost hollowed out. It was a very sturdy fortification. Looking at their nondescript uniforms, Zhang Tian immediately determined that this was Big Turtle Island. He flew over without saying anything. Most of these private soldiers were Chinese and many of them were even retired Chinese soldiers. Zhang Tian was too lazy to kill them. He only needed to kill the leader, Sixth Old Man Fan, to intimidate the others. After using an invisibility talisman on himself, Zhang Tian turned into a shadow and rushed toward the mountain. At this moment, in an extremely sturdy fortification hidden in the mountain, a large meeting room was brightly lit. Sixth Old Man Fan and many other big shots of the Big Circle gang sat around an old man. This old man was wearing an old green robe. He had a thin face and looked like an academic master from the Republic of China. However, when his eyes opened and closed, a bright light shot out. His aura was as deep as the sea and abnormally powerful. Grandmaster Situ, your visit to a small place like Great Turtle Island, the headquarters of the Great Circle, really brings light to our humble dwelling. Sixth Old Man Fan slapped the armrest of the chair and laughed. From now on, we have finally found a powerful backer. Well said, the Chinese of the world are one family. Master Situ smiled and said, you have made the right choice. Now that the Hong sect has reappeared, all the tycoons in the world are overjoyed. Even the Bai family of Yanjin has joined the Hong sect. The Bai family of Yanjin? Bai Tianlei and Hao Hongmei are the leaders of the 6 martial arts sects of Yanjin? Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and said in shock. Yes. When Yi Tianren was at war with the Hong sect, Bai Tianlei was the mediator. The Hong sect is also a member of the Hong sect. Master Situ nodded proudly and then said, over the years, you have managed to amass a few $100 billion USD worth of assets under the watchful eyes of the Americans. Although he was smiling, his tone was haughty, like a teacher praising an elementary school student. It is my honor to have Master Situ's approval. Sixth Old Man Fan's smile widened as if he had just received a huge compliment. From now on, we will donate 30% of our annual profits to the Hong sect and 5% to Mr. Situ. Although 5% didn't sound like a lot, it was still a sizable sum considering the Big Circle gang's annual profits of over 10 billion USD. However, Master Situ didn't seem to care. He cracked a smile and said, us cultivators are not interested in worldly wealth. We don't bring it with us when we are born and we don't take it with us when we die. Chapter 620. I know. If I had only prepared these items, it would be an insult to Mr. Situ's reputation. Sixth Old Man Fan laughed and gave Qin Yang the head of the Great Circle of North America. Qin Yang walked out of the room and took out a box made of yellow rosewood. The box was made of extraordinary material and the carvings were exquisite. It was wrapped in a thick layer of paste and looked like an antique. The value of the box was already extraordinary, and the value of the item inside was even more immeasurable. What a powerful surge of spirit qi. Open it. Mr. Situ's eyes lit up. Please take a look, Mr. Situ. Sixth old man Fan opened the box and took out a small red gourd. The gourd was small but exquisite. Looked like two pigeon eggs connected to each other. However, the surface of the gourd was covered with strange patterns that exuded a natural charm. Huh. These patterns look like Dao inscriptions. What is it? Master Situ was taken aback by the gourd's appearance. Master Situ, this gourd is not an ordinary gourd. It was stolen from Wei Shuigong's house when I exterminated his family. I heard that a Dharma spell master from Southeast Asia offered 300 million Wuxia dollars for it. Sixth old man Fan said. Good, good, good. Must be a treasure. Master Situ praised the gourd excitedly. Even I can't control this small gourd. If I gave it to the ancestral master, he would be very pleased. Perhaps the next leader of the Hong Triad would be him. As long as you like it, Mr. Situ, I have another treasure vault. You can take your pick after the meeting. Sixth old man Fan slapped the armrest of the chair and laughed. If there was an overlord who had been in the underground world for many years, he would have been shocked. The Hong sect, which had been banished by Heavenly Yi Run before the founding of the People's Republic of China for decades, had resurfaced and taken over a large group of companies with hundreds of billions of dollars in assets. However, to sixth old man Fan, this was the best choice he could make. Ever since Lin Zhenyu was killed and the Great Circle and Jiang Tian became enemies, the leader of the Great Circle, sixth old man Fan, had been living a nightmare. Kong Teichu massacred Jinling, killed hundreds of strong people from the Dark World, and defeated the 28-man mixed brigade of the East Sea. Every time something like this happened, sixth old man Fan would be alarmed. His heart was filled with regret and fear. Am I blind? Why did I provoke such a murderous god back then? Especially recently, there was a rumor in the Dark World that Kong Teichu had killed the professor and Zeus, broke the Wolf King's arm, and stepped on 3 powerful organizations led by the Palace of the Gods. Take control of the Sidoni regime and become the retired emperor of Sidoni. Sixth old man Fan was dumbfounded when he heard the news. Was this guy still human? He was a freak. The Palace of the Gods was backed by the Holy See and the European Union, Blue Storm was secretly supported by the Pentagon, and the Winter Soldiers was the trump card of Russia's Northern Army. Compared to the Palace of the Gods, it was no exaggeration to say that the so-called strong people of the Great Circle were just chickens and grass dogs waiting to be slaughtered. But now Kong Teichu had even killed them. Moreover, Kong Teichu was now in control of Sidoni. This was clearly the rhythm of establishing a country. In the future, with a modern army loyal to him, he would be like a tiger that had grown wings. His strength would multiply. If Kong Teichu wanted to kill him in the Great Circle, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. For a long time, sixth old man Fan was so anxious that he was going crazy. He had to drink a bottle of vodka and swallow a few sleeping pills every day before he could fall asleep. His body was getting worse by the day. Purchase weapons. Laser weapons are limited. As for tanks and the like, buy as many as you can. Strengthen the defense, transfer all the elites of the society here. Add another 500 men. The fortifications need to be rebuilt with alloys and special cement. One order after another was passed down. However, he knew that it was only a consolation. Kong Teichu was able to defeat the 28 Japanese mixed brigades, let alone the Great Circle army. In the end, he made the decision to ally himself with the Hong sect. The Hong sect was a secret organization of the Qing dynasty. The name Hong referred to Zhu Yuanzhang, and its purpose was to overthrow the Qing dynasty and restore the Ming dynasty. The Hong sect's power was unimaginable. The American branch of the Hong sect had supported Mr. Nakayama's revolutionary activities by giving him money and guns. Although the Hong sect had withdrawn from Wuxia, their influence was still concentrated in the United States and Canada. They also had many branches in Europe. Most importantly, the Hong sect had a few immortal state warriors and even a human deity in their ranks. The Hong sect was filled with overlords. Compared to a behemoth like the Hong sect, the Great Circle, which had only been around for 50 years, was nothing. That was why sixth old man Fan and many other tycoons were bowing to Mr. Situ, one of the 4 great guardians of the Hong sect. After chatting for a while, sixth old man Fan asked with a smile. Mr. Situ, how are you going to deal with Kong Teichu? You must be a half-step immortal state warrior, right? Kong Teichu. Situjia's face hardened a little when he heard the name. Then he cracked a smile and said, I am afraid that this man has already surpassed the immortal state. He is a half-step mortal deity. Half-step mortal deity. He has surpassed the immortal state. Everyone was taken aback by the development. That was an unimaginable level of attainment. An immortal state warrior could be relied on by an entire country, not to mention a half-step mortal deity. But you don't have to be afraid of him. Situjia smiled faintly and said disdainfully, as if he was holding a pearl of wisdom in his hand. This man is indeed powerful and talented, but he doesn't know how to use his own power. Dasoni is a remote place. What is there to fight for? He had killed Thorpe and other warlords and even trampled on organizations like the Palace of the Gods. This was tantamount to destroying the existing international order. He will face the wrath of the United States of America and other superpowers. Even if he has surpassed the immortal state and is made of steel, he is no match for the superpowers. Everyone nodded in agreement after hearing his analysis. Many years ago, the United States of America and other superpowers had suppressed immortal state warriors with nuclear weapons. Until now, many immortal state warriors had either gone into hiding or cooperated with the government. However, no one dared to provoke the superpowers. I bet Kong Teichu is having a headache right now. Sidoni is a hot potato. Black Ape Carl, the head of the African region, said with a smirk. He has already made himself known as the king of the underworld. If he loses Sidoni, he will be laughed at by many overlords. But if he does, he will face a lot of pressure. Although the United States of America will put some pressure on Kong Teichu, it will only distract him. Xiao Wu, the head of the North America region, said worriedly, I think we still need the Hong sect to intimidate him. Situ Jie nodded and said, that's exactly why I'm here. In a few months, the ancestral master of the Hong sect will come out of seclusion and hold a grand ceremony to declare war on Jiang Taichu. What? The ancestral master of the Hong sect is still alive? How is that possible? He is from the late Qing dynasty. Everyone's faces were filled with shock and some were filled with ecstasy. Do you think I am lying to you? Situ Jie gave them a disdainful glance and snorted in his mind. A bunch of ignorant fools. The ancestral master has the blood coagulation mystic art, which is comparable to the most advanced hibernation technology. How can the likes of you be able to fathom the abilities of that old man? He is going to declare war on Kong Teichu? Sixth old man Fan slapped his thigh and burst into laughter. This is great. If the ancestor comes out of seclusion, wouldn't that little kid Jiang Taichu be scared to the point of wetting his pants? Even as everyone was laughing, a faint voice drifted into their ears. Are you talking about me? The owner of the voice seemed to be at least a few kilometers away. But then, clank. The special alloy gate, which was custom-made from Rothschild Military Industrial Company and was more than 20 centimeters thick and could withstand cannons, was punched open from the outside. The huge metal pieces flew in all directions, and the guards on both sides of the gate were immediately turned into a bloody mist. Who is it? There's an expert. Everyone's expression changed drastically as they stood up and looked towards the door. A black-haired, black-eyed young man in casual clothes walked in lazily. Kongti. Sixth old man Fan gasped as if he had seen a ghost. His knees buckled and he almost fell to the ground. Inside a luxurious cabin on the Princess Paris. Paris was sitting in front of her desk, her slender fingers typing rapidly on the keyboard of her Apple PC. Her hair was tied up high, and she wore a pair of black-rimmed anti-blue glasses. Her shirt was snow-white and she wore a pencil skirt and black stockings. Her beautiful feet stepped on the Persian cashmere carpet, and her toes, which were dyed pink with Lancome fingernail polish, moved playfully in her stockings. At this moment she finally showed her capable and astute side. Now she was Jiang Tianyu's consultant and his agent in the United States. She was in charge of collecting and analyzing intelligence, dividing the enemy's factions and giving strategic advice. In short, she was Sidoni's Kerberg or the CIA. Suddenly someone knocked on the door. Under Jenny's lead, a middle-aged man who looked smart and capable walked in. Where's Mr. Jiang? He was Paris's former colleague in the CIA. He was a senior military intelligence analyst with the rank of colonel. After he received a pill to cure his daughter's terminal illness, he decided to work for Jiang Tian. He was Paris's right-hand man. He is going to kill someone. Paris smiled smugly and said, I just heard from Captain Jack that he is going to visit the Great Turtle Island of the Great Circle. If I am not mistaken, the Great Circle is going to be removed from the Great Circle. Shit. The middle-aged man slapped his thigh and said, I just got the news that one of the 4 elders of the Hong sect, Zhou, has arrived at the Great Turtle Island of the Great Circle. He is half a step away from immortal state, and he has brought along his eldest disciple, the #1 mixed martial arts master Tiger. The Great Circle and the Hong sect are going to work together to target Kong Teichu. Chapter 621. What? Paris was startled as a worried look appeared on her face. She didn't even bother to put on her shoes as she dashed out of the door toward the landing pad on the deck. Has she lost her mind? Jenny and the former CIA Colonel Royce White looked at each other and chased after her helplessly. Meanwhile, at the base on Big Turtle Island, Kong Teichu, 6th Old Man Fan, screamed as soon as he saw Zhang Tian. He was so frightened that he almost knelt on the ground. How dare you call me by my name? You've tried to provoke me twice and exposed my information on the dark web. Do you deserve to die? Zhang Tian smirked. Well, didn't you ask Xu Wei from Battle Dragon to tell me that you wouldn't kill me? 6th Old Man Fan's heart raced as he trembled in fear. What should come still came. If Zhang Tian wanted to kill him, who could stop him? He was someone who could fight an army head-on. I was just joking with you. How could you take it seriously? What a joke. Besides, when I was sent to Japan, you offered a second reward to kill the Heavenly Alliance. Zhang Tian said coldly. Kill yourself and I'll leave your body intact. How dare you? How dare you disrespect 6th Old Man Fan? Die. Black Ape Carl didn't believe it. He roared as he stomped on the ground, cracking the granite floor. Energy surged up from the ground as he charged at Zhang Tian like a black tornado. Black Ape Carl was the leader of the African continent and the descendant of a mysterious old priest in the African jungle. He had awakened his power and could control the energy of the earth. He could even smash an armored vehicle with one punch. Zhang Tian was famous, but Black Ape Carl didn't believe him. How could he reach the immortal state at such a young age? He wanted to test Zhang Tian's power. If he could kill Zhang Tian, he would use him as a stepping stone for his own rise. Black Ape Carl's fist smashed down, containing a berserk power. Instantly, a sonic boom rang out, tearing through the air. A faint shadow of a fist rippled out from the tip of the fist, and circles of air rippled out in all directions. Seeing this, even Zhou was amazed, but he shook his head lightly. Black Ape Carl was indeed very strong. He was comparable to a fighting master. For Fan Liuji to have such a powerful subordinate, it was no wonder that the Great Circle had been developing so well all these years. However, the difference between him and Kong Teichu was too great. He would most likely be defeated within 3 moves. Die. But how could Zhang Tian use a second move? His jade-white palm casually struck out. There was a loud rumble. The 7th metal true essence, like a monstrous wave, blasted out. Whoosh. Black Ape Carl disappeared from where he stood. With a loud boom, he was sent flying more than 10 meters away, crashing into a granite wall. He blasted a human-shaped dent in the wall and embedded himself in it. His body was badly mutilated. His mouth was open and blood was spurting out from his mouth along with pieces of his heart and lungs. He couldn't be more dead. So powerful. I finally understand why he was able to rise so powerfully and become known as the #1 expert in Wuxia. Zhou stared at Zhang Tian as a light flickered in his eyes. There was a hint of disbelief, a hint of fear, and a hint of amazement in his eyes. How is that possible? Is this the power of an immortal state warrior? The others also found it hard to believe. Black Ape Carl was one of the most powerful figures in the Great Circle. Even though he was not as powerful as Zhang Tian, he should be able to hold his own for a while. But who would have thought that Zhang Tian would be able to end the battle so easily in less than a second? This was simply an instant kill in reality. Today I will only kill Fan Liuji. It has nothing to do with anyone else. If you want to live, you will have to kneel and surrender in 3 seconds. Otherwise you will die. Zhang Tian didn't even look at Zhou. Instead he scanned the crowd and said coldly, the ancestral master of the Hong sect might be able to defeat him. However, Situ Jia was only half a step away from the immortal state. Therefore he had no choice but to die as far as he could. Grandmaster Jiang, we submit. We are willing to renounce the darkness and seek the light. We only ask that Grandmaster Jiang spare our lives. Plop. Other than Little Five, the other big shots and people in charge of the big circle all knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging for mercy. Jiang Tian looked at Little Five in surprise and said coldly, "You're not kneeling. Are you not afraid of me?" "Of course I am. Of course I am." Xiao Wu's body trembled uncontrollably. However, he gritted his teeth and said, "If not for the fact that we are enemies, I would admire you and want to follow you. However, I owe my life to Sixth Old Man Fan. 10 years ago, Sixth Old Man Fan saved my life when I was surrounded by my enemies. You can kill me, but I will never betray Sixth Old Man Fan." I have rarely seen such a stubborn person in the past few years. Jiang Tian nodded approvingly. He was impressed by Xiao Wu's character. Sixth Old Man Fan's heart was filled with despair and fear when he saw his capable subordinates kneeling and begging for mercy from Jiang Tian within a second. He looked at Situ Jia with a pitiful expression, hoping that Situ Jia would say a few words for him on account of how loyal he was. "Master Kong, I am Situ Jia, one of the 4 elders of the Hong sect. Maybe you don't know this, but the Great Circle Group is now the Great Circle Group of the Hong sect." Situ Jia heaved a sigh when he saw the pleading look in Sixth Old Man Fan's eyes. He walked up to Qin Fan and cupped his fists. "Master Kong, I wonder if you would spare Fan Lu's life for the sake of the Hong sect? Who do you think you are? Do you think I would spare your life?" Jiang Tian didn't even look at him. He smirked and said, "If you want to protect him, then show me your true strength. Otherwise, get out of my sight." "Master Kong, you are challenging the Hong sect. Are you not afraid of their ancestral master? Before he went into seclusion, he was already a mortal deity. He might even be an earth-level deity now." Situ Jia's face flushed red with anger and fear. He knew that Kong Teichu was very arrogant, but he didn't expect that he would not even give face to the Hong sect. "Hong sect? Who do you think you are? You are not worthy of my challenge. Didn't the ancestral master of the Hong sect want to fight with me? Fine, I will give him a gift." Jiang Tian snorted disdainfully. He raised his hand and unleashed a Gungjin Qi weapon. "That is your head. Arg. You dare to kill me?" Suddenly, Situ Jia's heart skipped a beat. He threw out a few jade talismans and dermic instruments and formed a protective aura with his true qi. These jade talismans and dermic instruments were collected by Situ Jia over the course of his life. Each and every one of them came from a powerful background. They were priceless and could withstand the attack of an immortal state cultivator or even a half-step mortal deity. He would never use them unless it was absolutely necessary. But today he had used them all to block Jiang Tian's attack. Immediately, a total of 10 colorful light shields were formed, firmly protecting his entire body. Among them there was even a soul avatar that was misty and hazy. He was tall and wore a long green robe. His appearance was strange and imposing. A long sword hung from his waist, making him look like a scholar from the Qing dynasty. His bearing was truly extraordinary and could suppress the heavens and the earth. That is the divine soul avatar of the Hong sect's ancestral master. That old man is too heaven-defying. He is too powerful. Only a human immortal would be able to refine such a heavy clone. Many people were shocked by the sight of the avatar as if they had seen a god. The divine soul avatar was not sentient, but it was alert. He swung his sword in an attempt to stop Jiang Tian's attack. "Weak. You are too weak." Jiang Tian snorted. He did not even bother to attack again. Sure enough, under Jiang Tianging's golden qi blade, all the protective shields of the magic tools and jade talismans shattered in an instant like paper. The divine soul avatar of the Hong sect's ancestral master raised his sword to block the attack. However, the divine soul avatar was sliced in half by the Gungjin Qi blade. The divine soul avatar spun in the air and turned into a cloud of green light particles. The avatar of Hong sect's Gungjin Qi blade was as fragile as paper under Jiang Tian's Gungjin Qi blade. The Gungjin Qi blade did not slow down and continued to coil around Situ Jia's neck. Puff! Blood spurted out as Situ Jia's head flew into the air. In his blurry consciousness he could still see his headless corpse standing there. He must be a mortal deity. He is so powerful. Situ Jie's last bit of consciousness came back to him before he was plunged into eternal darkness. Everyone was shocked by what they had seen. Everyone was dumbfounded by what they saw. As a matter of fact, the Great Circle had been enemies with Zhang Tian for a long time. Therefore they had studied Zhang Tian thoroughly. They had been keeping a close eye on Zhang Tian's battles. However, they still did not expect Zhang Tian to be so powerful that he could even kill Situ Jie, who was half a step into the divine realm. Not to mention that he had so many Dharma artifacts and even the divine soul avatar of Hong Sek's ancestral master. Everyone was dumbstruck. But suddenly one of the figure's expression changed drastically. Then he ran out of the door like a cheetah or tiger. It was Situ Jie's disciple, the renowned mixed martial arts grandmaster Tiger. Die. Zhang Tian didn't even look at him. He didn't even lift a finger. Bang. Tiger's head exploded as yellow and white matter splattered all over the floor. His headless body fell to the ground as blood gushed out of his wounds. Master Kong, I am sorry. Please be magnanimous and spare my life. Seeing this, sixth old man Fan's body trembled uncontrollably. He knew that his death was imminent. Plop. He dropped to his knees and kowtowed to Chen Fan. Is this the sky-swallowing demonic gourd? Am I that lucky? After killing Situ Jie and the other two, Zhang Tian didn't pay any attention to the others. Instead he focused his attention on the red gourd on the table. He scanned the gourd with his divine will and his face changed color. His divine will had devoured a few Japanese shikigami and the soul energy of the most powerful psychic adept in the world, Professor Sidoni. His divine will was like a bottomless abyss that could penetrate anything within 100 miles. Could even penetrate a special alloy that was half a meter thick. However, Zhang Tian's divine will couldn't penetrate the gourd at all. Instead, it felt like there was a repulsive force that made the golden lake in his forehead ripple. In fact, when Zhang Tian entered the room he had already thought that the gourd might be the sky-swallowing demonic gourd. However, he wasn't sure at the time. Now that he had scanned it with his divine will, he was overjoyed. The sky-swallowing demonic gourd. It was considered a superior-grade Dharma treasure even in the realm of cultivation. It was much more powerful than the storage rings made with void stones. Chapter 622. This object had naturally formed spatial markings that seized the fortune of the heavens and the earth, and the space contained within it was deep and vast. The most heaven-defying thing was that once this item recognized an owner, the space within it would continue to expand as the owner refined it. Zhang Tian tried to place this gourd into his storage ring, and as expected the red gourd remained motionless. This was the law of spatial artifacts. The higher the level of a spatial artifact, the stronger the spatial folding ability. Low-level spatial artifacts were unable to fold high-level spatial artifacts. The sky-devouring demonic gourd, on the other hand, could fold and swallow normal spatial artifacts. Normal storage bags and storage rings were no match for it. I'm rich. Looks like I'm still going to get something regardless of whether I have it or not. A mere circle actually has such heaven-defying treasures. The corners of Zhang Tian's mouth couldn't help but curl into a smile. Back then, in outer space, an almighty had refined this gourd into a large-scale spatial artifact, and it had instantly swallowed a continent with a radius of tens of thousands of miles. There were also people who had refined this item into a flying artifact, using it to swallow space and compress it to the extreme, changing the curvature of space and then spitting it out. After riding it, it could cross the sea of stars and cross the universe. This item could be said to have endless uses. How could Zhang Tian not be overjoyed? When Zhang Tian checked the small gourd, everyone was shocked. Everyone was filled with fear and trepidation, yet they were like clay statues that didn't dare move at all, let alone flee. Seeing the smile on Zhang Tian's face, sixth old man Fan's courage grew. He trembled and said, Master Kong, I'm willing to give you all my assets. I only ask that you spare my life. I'll leave the pugilistic world and never interfere with pugilistic world matters again. I will never take revenge on you. At this moment he was sobbing so hard that snot bubbles were coming out of his nose. At this moment he no longer had the domineering aura of the leader of the circle. He was just an ordinary old man who was afraid of death. Seeing this, little Five sighed and looked very disappointed. After all, sixth old man Fan had lived like a prince for too long. He had long lost his courage. At this moment, little Five sadly realized that even without Kong Teichu, the circle wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. If handing over the family property would allow one to retreat unscathed, would there still be anyone who would die in Jianghu? What does it matter if you hand it over or not? Today I want to take it by force. What can you do about it? Zhang Tian tied the sky-devouring demonic gourd to his belt and walked forward slowly. He reached out his hand and grabbed the top of his head with his 5 fingers, probing his consciousness. The soul-controlling art went against the laws of nature. It consumed a lot of Xiao Chen's lifeblood quintessence. It was the same with the soul-searching technique. However, this kind of mind-touching soul-searching technique consumed very little energy. In the entire world, only Zhang Tian could use it. Little Five, you still think that he saved your life and you're still loyal to this bastard. After examining his memories, Zhang Tian suddenly sneered and used a secret technique. The air rumbled as green light particles floated out from the top of sixth old man Fan's head, forming a lifelike image as if it was the most advanced 3D projection. What is this? Everyone was stunned and little Five even cried out in surprise. In the image, sixth old man Fan, who was much younger than he was now, was talking to a middle-aged man wearing a fancy shirt. Little Five will appear at Crown Casino tonight at 8 p.m. You can kill his men but you can't kill him. Sixth old man Fan's voice was faint. I still want his woman and the casinos under his control. His woman is very beautiful. The leader of the Vietnamese gang Nguyen Tien sneered. Sure. I only want little Five. He's very capable but he's too arrogant. He won't accept my recruitment. Sixth old man Fan sneered. If you kill him he can only rely on me and ask me to avenge him. Whoosh. Zhang Tian released his palm and the light particles dissipated. The image disappeared. Little Five's body froze. He stared at sixth old man Fan with tears in his eyes and roared. Sixth old man Fan. No wonder all these years when I asked you to kill Nguyen Tien, you always made excuses and didn't do it. No wonder when I secretly went to Crown Casino to kill him, I was stopped by that Nguyen guy. Chow chow lue bie. Brothers, I'm sorry. Little Five howled at the sky as tears rolled down his cheeks. Little Five, I admire you. I'm doing this because I want you to be my brother. Sixth old man Fan waved his hand and exclaimed, trembling in fear. Brother? You're insulting the word. You're not human. Little Five took out a gun and pointed it at sixth old man Fan's head. Do you think I'm a monkey? Spare me this time. Sixth old man Fan was still begging. However, little Five did not say anything. Bang. He shot sixth old man Fan in the head. Then he threw the gun away and walked to Zhang Tian. He kowtowed and wailed, Little Five, Little Five. Little Five is ignorant. If it wasn't for Grandmaster Zhang using his divine ability to let me know the truth, I would still be in the dark. I'm willing to become Master Kang's disciple. I'll go through fire and water and I'll do anything for you. He already knew that Zhang Tian was the strongest person he had ever met in his life. But now reality had proven that the sixth Master Fan he had been following so loyally was nothing more than a heartless and vicious bastard. Compared to Grandmaster Zhang, who valued friendship and righteousness, the difference was like heaven and earth. There was no comparison at all. If he still didn't follow Zhang Tian and stubbornly resisted, then he would be a fool. Get up. Zhang Tian helped him up and smiled. From now on, you're my disciple. What? Master Kong is willing to accept me as his disciple? Little Five wiped his tears. He could not believe it and was overjoyed. Yes, now you have a senior sister and a senior brother. Zhang Tian smiled faintly. The senior sister is Tang Linglong, the leader of Yuan Zhanlong. The other one is the leader of the Long Formation Yi Zhantian. You are my third disciple. Master, please accept my kowtow. Hearing this, Little Five was so shocked that he gasped. At the same time he felt honored and kowtowed again. Yi Zhantian is my master's disciple. From now on he will be my senior brother. Although the Great Circle was powerful, it was not as powerful as the Huaxia Long Formation. That was Huaxia's most powerful weapon. Very well. Zhang Tian calmly accepted his kowtow. Then he used his divine sense to pass on a set of cultivation techniques to him, allowing him to cultivate on his own. He noticed that Little Five's bone root was not bad. He had already reached the phenomenal stage and he was also a loyal person. Now he needed someone to help him control the Great Circle and build up Sidoni. That was why Zhang Tian gave up on the other Great Circle leaders and put Little Five in charge. Of course, if Zhang Tian didn't find out about his relationship with Fan Lu, Zhang Tian wouldn't have let him stay. This guy was stubborn and had reached the initial stage of the transcendent state. If Qin Fan didn't kill him, he would be a huge threat in the future. After passing on the immortal will to Qin Fan, Zhang Tian smiled and asked, "Where is the Great Circle's treasure vault? Take me there." "Yes, master, please come with me." Qin Yang hurriedly bowed and said respectfully. It was half an hour later when Paris boarded the helicopter and arrived at Big Turtle Island. It was fine on the ship, but on Big Turtle Island, the stockings on her feet were torn, and there were streaks of blood on her tender feet. She even shot 3 of the soldiers who tried to stop her. She didn't get into the base until she received Little Five's order and the soldiers retreated. She saw Zhang Tian sitting on the dragon throne and a group of senior officials were kneeling in front of him. Little Five bowed to Zhang Tian and seemed to be reporting something. Reyes and Jenny, who were following behind her, exclaimed in unison, Isn't this the California senator, the North American minister of the Big Circle Gang and 6th Master Fan's most valued foster son, Gun God 5th brother? From now on there is no Brother 5 of the Great Circle. There is only Master Kang's disciple, Qin Yang. Little Five bowed respectfully. Qin Yang was a mortal deity who had surpassed the immortal state and was much more powerful than Lin Zhenyu. To be able to become Zhang Tian's disciple, he only felt that it was the fortune of 3 lifetimes, and smoke was rising from his ancestors' graves. Zhang Tian sat on the throne and sipped the cloud mist tea made by Qin Yang. He said lightly, "From now on, the Great Circle of the United States is an ally of the Hilton family and the California Financial Group. If you have any problems, just go to him." "Yes, Master Kong." Paris and Reyes were shocked. They felt like they were in a dream. The Great Circle was the most powerful organization in the Chinese world. It had many powerful overlords and even the governor of the United States didn't dare to offend it. However, Grandmaster Zhang only used less than half an hour to subdue them. This was simply like crushing dry weeds. With Qin Yang's help, Zhang Tian was very confident about the Great Circle. Zhang Tian had helped Qin Yang uncover the truth and take revenge. He also taught Qin Yang a cultivation art. Qin Yang would be loyal to him, which was more effective than the curse of ecstasy. After all, humans were emotional creatures. Qin Yang used to be the second leader of the Great Circle. In fact, the Great Circle only rose to prominence after Qin Yang joined it 10 years ago. In the beginning, the Great Circle was only involved in the arms, drugs, human trafficking and smuggling business. Qin Yang was very capable. He recruited people and expanded the Great Circle from California to the rest of the world. He invested in a lot of white businesses and helped the Great Circle gain a legal status. If Qin Yang was more ambitious, he would have already replaced the Great Circle. No one in the Great Circle disobeyed him. Therefore, Zhang Tian was very confident that Qin Yang would be in charge of the Great Circle. "This is a superior grade qi nourishing pill. Take it and you will reach the peak of the transcendent state." Zhang Tian handed over a pill to Qin Yang and said, "Refine this pill according to the cultivation method I taught you. Your original Zhen Qi will not be wasted, it will all be transformed into Zhen Yuan." "Yes." Qin Yang took the pill skeptically and swallowed it. Then he sat down on the ground and started to refine the pill. 15 minutes later, Qin Yang suddenly stood up. He stood up and his eyes shone brightly. "Master, this elixir is too miraculous. I've broken through. This. Could it be that the master and disciple are putting on a show to trick us?" Everyone was suspicious and couldn't believe it. Chapter 623. Cultivation was like sailing against the current. If you didn't advance, you would fall behind. It was extremely difficult. Even the most talented martial artists would find it difficult to make any progress even if they had countless resources. Wanting to break through in a quarter of an hour was simply like a myth or a legend. "Qin Yang, give it a try." Zhang Tian knew what these people were thinking. He smiled and said, "Yes, master." Yang activated his martial art. He didn't try to gather his qi to form a stance, but directly threw out a punch. This punch had an earth-shattering power. Even the air was torn apart by the fist force. The air was filled with the sound of air exploding like tires. Roar. A multicolored tiger condensed on the tip of his fist and leaped out, waving its tiger claws wildly. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The claws left a few deep marks on the granite wall. Qi form. It's the sign of the peak of the transcendent state. He is as powerful as Lin Zhenyu. He can create another Lin Zhenyu in 15 minutes. Everyone was dumbfounded. They no longer doubted Jiang Tian's power. Suddenly, everyone revered Jiang Tian as if he was a god. Their impression of Jiang Tian was renewed. It was not scary to be a powerful person. What was scarier was that he could increase the power of others and create many overlords. We are willing to follow Master Kong for the rest of our lives. If you have any orders, we will do it without hesitation. Everyone knelt down as their eyes were filled with awe and admiration. They all thought that if they were recognized by Grandmaster Jiang, wouldn't they also be able to strengthen their cultivation and advance 1,000 miles in a day? Or perhaps they could stimulate their potential and become a peerless expert. If it was said that they were only afraid of Jiang Tian before, then now they were wholeheartedly supporting and following him. Very well. Do your best. You can have as many elixirs as you want. Jiang Tian looked at the people kneeling on the ground and said lightly, I can help you reach a higher level every year. The immortal state and even beyond are just around the corner. The art of controlling subordinates was nothing more than a combination of kindness and power. Hit with a stick and then give with 3 melons and 2 dates. This kind of method was often effective and always successful. For these experts who were almost all above the transcendent state, they had almost transcended the mortal world. Worldly wealth was at their fingertips. Which one of them was not rich? His only expectation was to improve his cultivation and pry into the truth of the deity realm. And Jiang Tian had given them this opportunity, so how could they not be loyal? Please rest assured, Master Kong. We will not hesitate to sacrifice our lives for you. Everyone was excited and their gazes became even more fervent. After I leave, except for the members of the U.S. headquarters, all of you will immediately depart for Sidoni. Jiang Tian sipped his tea and gave his orders. Contact Tang Xiaozi. He's doing infrastructure construction there. Please support and help them to ensure their safety. Especially Qin Yang. You have to become a citizen of Sidoni and become one with the locals. Do more good deeds, especially in the areas of healthcare, education, drinking water, and so on. After the Great Migration meeting, Tang Xiaozi and the other construction forces had already arrived in Sidoni with hundreds of billions in funds. He had started a construction frenzy in Sidoni. Many ports, railways, roads, commercial plazas, residential areas, military and civilian airports, and the Taoist temple on Tianqing Mountain were under construction. However, Tang Xiaozi's company had a few thousand employees and they had no experience in overseas construction. Many of them didn't even know English. But the Great Circle Society was different. It was an international organization with hundreds of billions of dollars in funds. There were tens of thousands of members and most of them were retired soldiers. They were knowledgeable, disciplined, and skilled in all kinds of skills. They were the most suitable people to open up new land. Of course, I won't let you work for nothing. I plan to build a longevity sanatorium in Sidoni. A lot of rich people will move there and the real estate industry will flourish. You can quickly enclose land and build real estate projects. I think the interim government of Sidoni will give you a good price. You will become one of the top real estate tycoons in Sidoni and the world. Besides, Sidoni will soon elect a president and form a cabinet and military. Qin Yang, if you do well, you will be the president of Sidoni. If you do well, you can even become a major general in the army. Jiang Tian smiled. He was still using the carrot and stick approach. Jiang Tian had considered many candidates for the position of president. First, they had to have the ability and second, they had to be loyal to him. After thinking about it, Qin Yang was more suitable. After all, he used to control the Great Circle Society, the world's top Chinese organization. It was comparable to a country. Real estate tycoon? President? Air Force Major General? Qin Yang and the others were overjoyed. They couldn't believe it. No matter how rich the Great Circle Society was, It was just an organization that walked on the edge of the law. Many of their businesses were between illegal and legal and were monitored by the judicial departments of various countries. Last year, several middle-level managers were arrested by the U.S. Department of Justice. They were like rats hiding in the dark. However, it was different now. Everyone had many choices. Whether they were real estate tycoons, presidents, or generals, they could all walk on the surface and have a bright future. It was much better than being in the Great Circle Society. Master, let's get ready and set off. Qin Yang couldn't wait to be the president. It was so exciting. Okay, get busy. I should go to Wuxia. I think they are almost done with the preparations. At this time, the Great Circle Society's heavenly materials and earthly treasures had been packed and transported to the Princess Paris. Jiang Tian got up and walked out of the defense base leisurely. He boarded the ship and left. When Jiang Tian set foot in the U.S. and met with Marshall, the Heaven Alliance was not idle. After the Great Migration meeting, Zhang Qinzhen submitted his resignation to the Government Affairs Council. Fortunately, Zhang Qinzhen had only been the chairman of the military-industrial group for a few months. His tenure was short. Moreover, Zhou Xian tried his best to persuade him that the establishment of Sidoni was more beneficial to Wuxia. After a night of discussion, the chiefs finally made a decision. They allowed Zhang Qinzhen to resign and let him go. They supported Jiang Tian's establishment of Sidoni. They gave him the green light all the way. They even had to send him on his way. Jiang Tian's trillions of assets were put to use immediately. First, they needed to buy the rest of the Medicine King Group's shares and complete the delisting. They needed close to 100 billion. More importantly, they needed to buy more than 10 warships, countless fighter jets, bombers, helicopters, tanks, artillery, and so on. Because of Jiang Tian's good relationship with the military and the support of Zhou Xian and the others, the agreement was reached quickly. It was Tai Ming Huang's family who negotiated with the military. Zhang Qinzhen was the mastermind behind the scenes. Tai Ming Huang used to be a special-class pilot in the Air Force. His family was in the military industry. Even though he was usually frivolous and looked like a rich kid, he had never neglected his professional skills. He knew the data and cost of all kinds of weapons very well. This deal was fair and mutually beneficial for both Sidoni and Wuxia. The contract was worth an astonishing 230 billion Wuxia dollars. The United States of America sold 20 billion US dollars in 2009. Our deal with Master Kong is twice as much as theirs. Zhou Xian concluded at the celebration meeting. That's right. Master Kong is rich and generous. He might become the next Saudi Arabian. He's a big client. A big boss of the military-industrial group said with anticipation. In order to build a modern army, it was not enough to have a martial arts grandmaster. They were the last trump card, the ultimate weapon, but a conventional combat force was also needed. Tai Ming Huang was in charge of recruiting a large number of retired soldiers as reinforcements. Together with the large circle of retired soldiers, the number reached 20,000 in an instant. Among them, there were many retired soldiers from the War Dragon and the Fierce Tigers. For example, Su Yuhang, who had just retired from the Jin City military, went to Yanjin to join the army. For these capable retired soldiers, Jiang Tian gave them very generous conditions. Their annual salary was a few $100,000 according to their skills and qualities. The highest salary was $1 million plus insurance for injuries and deaths. If they died, they would be compensated in the millions. This kind of salary was far more than any rich mercenary in the world. In fact, the former chief consultant of the War Dragon martial arts sect didn't even need to pay. These iron-blooded, ferocious men were willing to follow. In the eyes of these peerless warriors, Master Kong was like a god. They would do anything to follow Master Kong in the war for free. Besides, he also hired the commanders of the War Dragon martial arts sect and modern weapons instructors to conduct military training for the grandmasters and their disciples. Although these grandmasters were powerful, they didn't know how to use modern weapons. This shortcoming had to be fixed. Not only that, Jiang Tian also asked the Observer to make an announcement on the dark web, recruiting soldiers and overlords from all over the world. This time it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The entire dark world was stirred up. These overlords of the dark world couldn't be judged by common sense. It was their nature to break the law and provoke the order of society. They were fanatical warmongers and their hearts were filled with restlessness. War was a great pleasure and a blessing for them. Following Master Kong was like challenging the United States of America and other superpowers. Just thinking about it made them excited. More importantly, the temptation of a cultivation sacred ground was irresistible. Master Kong was building a new order and a new civilization. This was simply too imaginative. One by one, the overlords of the Dark World rushed to join Sidoni. One after another, hidden monsters appeared and were about to show their sharp claws and fangs to the world. They wanted to follow Kong Techu and build a new country that could challenge the superpowers of the world. In addition to the remuneration for these overlords and soldiers, in order to build a modern army, he basically spent 200 billion yuan. In 2009, Wuxia's total military expenditure was 700 billion yuan. Now Jiang Tian's expenditure was equivalent to one-third of that. For Sidoni, which was only equivalent to the area of 2 provinces in Wuxia, this was undoubtedly a huge sum of money. As for Jiang Tian, although he was still a hands-off boss and didn't interfere with these specific affairs, he wasn't idle either. He was crazily refining weapons. Chapter 624. On the way back, Jiang Tian had obtained the sky-devouring magic gourd and many other treasures from the Great Circle Treasury. In addition to the resources he had obtained from the Chinese Society, the Cherry Blossom Society, as well as from defeating Miyamoto Genichi and Zeus, his wealth was as vast as the sea. In addition to refining the sky-devouring magic gourd, Jiang Tian also planned to refine some magical artifacts for his disciples. In the past, Jiang Tian was not interested in many of the materials for refining magical artifacts and elixir pills, as they were useless to him. However, now that the battle formation was laid out and he wanted to build a heavenly army and heavenly generals, Jiang Tian could no longer only consider himself. Before he started refining, Jiang Tian called Zhang Qinzhen over to look at his research results and gave him some guidance on refining magical artifacts. In addition to some technical guidance such as correcting some mistakes, Jiang Tian's guidance was more directional. Zhang Qinzhen's mind was filled with many thoughts, but there were too many for him to take care of. Jiang Tian asked him to focus on a few small and medium-sized magical artifacts, such as the Kuelian defense system. As for the other ideas that could not be tested at the moment, he did not want to waste his energy on them. In terms of refining methods, Jiang Tian gave him a book called Classical Refining Essentials for him to study. In the cultivation world there were many refining schools. The primitive school and the classical school were born in the early stages of the cultivation civilization. The modern school and the postmodern school were also divided into the academic school, the grassroots school, the magical school, and so on. In fact, most of the magical artifacts that Zhang Qinzhen had designed belonged to the academic school of the modern school. It was a magical artifact that had components that could sense information from the outside world and a crystal processor that could perform high-speed calculations and analysis. It also required many complex components. The magical artifacts of this stage were characterized by complex structures, fine craftsmanship, and intelligent reactions. Although the modern refining school was a latecomer, it had its own advantages. But for Jiang Tian, it also had its own limitations and disadvantages, which was the lack of a lot of high-grade and precious refining materials. The lack of materials on Earth made it difficult to implement many of Zhang Qinzhen's ingenious ideas and designs. Jiang Tian believed that if he used the classical refining method, it would be more beneficial for the Kuelian system to make a fundamental breakthrough. As for this book, Classical Factions Refining Essentials, it was the culmination of the classical factions refining theories. It could allow Zhang Qinzhen to make up for his shortcomings and exploit his strengths while avoiding his weaknesses. Jiang Tian, this book is amazing. It has awakened many of my memories. I think I can build a Kuelian weapon system within 5 months. After reading this book, Zhang Qinzhen felt as if he had found a treasure. His face was filled with ecstasy and many ideas had been opened up. All right, don't worry. Jiang Tian patted him on the shoulder and encouraged him. In addition, Jiang Tian also gave him a lot of suitable spirit stones, meteorites, rare metals, precious wood, and other materials. Before they parted ways, Jiang Tian instructed him to communicate more with Daoist master Hong Yi and other master craftsmen. Presumably, the progress of the research would increase rapidly. These days, Qing'er and Ling cultivated and made breakthroughs on their own. Jiang Tian had no one to disturb him. After arranging this matter, he began to refine his own tools. First of all, he had to refine the sky-devouring demonic gourd. He spent a lot of time and effort, using various methods to continuously refine this treasure. Finally, he was able to brand his divine sense on it, achieving the magic treasure's acknowledgement of its master and successfully controlling this magic treasure. This gourd is really extraordinary. It can be called a spiritual item. With my cultivation in the late stage of refining, it took me a month to imprint my divine sense on it and open up the space. On this day, Jiang Tian was wearing a white robe on the incense burner peak. He sighed with a long gaze. Let's try it out. Jiang Tian took the sky-devouring demonic gourd from his waist and pulled out the cork. A look of anticipation appeared on his face. As Jiang Tian activated his divine sense, the many natural patterns on the red gourd flickered red and emitted thousands of rays of light. Whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly the wind and clouds surged, the sun and the moon dimmed, and the sky changed color. At the mouth of the gourd, a surge of devouring power was formed. Rumble. There was a loud noise. Hundreds of meters away, a granite boulder that was hundreds of meters wide and weighed dozens of tons shook violently. Then it slowly left the ground and flew toward the mouth of the gourd. The natural spatial patterns on the gourd flickered and filled the air with red light. The mouth of the gourd emitted a black light and the space folded. The boulder that flew over changed rapidly. It kept shrinking and condensing and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Amazing! Jiang Tian was even more surprised when he probed inside with his divine sense. The space within the gourd had a radius of 10 miles, which was equivalent to the space of thousands of storage rings. Moreover, he sensed that the suction force just now was extremely powerful. It could even devour hundreds of tons of material in an instant. Release. Jiang Tian smiled and activated his divine sense. The mouth of the gourd spat out rays of light and the boulder spurted out. Clang. When the boulder hit the ground, within a radius of a few kilometers, the earth shook and the mountains shook violently, as if a great earthquake had occurred. Even the people in the city could feel the tremors. When I reach the foundational level, I might be able to compress the space inside the demonic gourd and blast it out at the speed of sound. This thing is a super bomb. Jiang Tian smiled lightly and he was extremely satisfied and complacent. It's time to make armor and disposable flying swords. After the refinement of the gourd, Jiang Tian began to make artifacts for his comrades. Jiang Tian already had an idea of how to make artifacts for others. In the past 3 years, Jiang Tian had obtained countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures, including many rare metals. Soon Jiang Tian made the best use of everything. At the rate of 5 or 6 sets a day, he had made over 100 sets of armor in a month. Dao patterns were carved on these armors and incantations flickered about. They were like iron hooks and silver strokes, giving off a wild sense of beauty. Since it is for the Sky Army, let's call it Sky Armor. Jiang Tian rubbed his chin and smiled. Once equipped, these armors could increase the defense power of the Iron Body Internal Force user to the Grandmaster level. If the user was already a Grandmaster, they could be upgraded to the Immortal state level and withstand the barrage of missiles and heavy artillery. If the artifact forging masters in the cultivation world saw these armors, they would be shocked. These Dao patterns and spells came from the cultivation civilization, especially the Yaoyang continent, where the artifact forging civilization was highly developed. These were the best armors of the most famous artifact forging sect, the Star Ocean sect. The disposable flying sword was also Jiang Tian's temporary solution. There were too few materials on Earth that were suitable for making flying swords. Flying swords used talisman arrays to draw spirit chi from heaven and earth or the energy of crystals to create powerful kinetic energy. Its speed could break the sound barrier and achieve extreme speed and attack power. When the energy was drawn, whether it was the vibration of the sword itself, the high temperature caused by the friction with the air, or the release of energy when hitting the target, it would create a violent and destructive force on the sword. Jiang Tian had been lucky before. Xiao Hei's flying sword was modified from the heavenly quartz sword and the raw material was the fairy tear black gold. But after that, Jiang Tian's luck ran out. He couldn't find any more fairy tier black gold or Gingjin iron essence. The materials in front of him were basically the Heaven Thunder Bamboo, Miyamoto Geniki's Demon Blade Muramesa Fragment, the Divine Knight's Shield and Sword and Zeus's Scepter, etc. The flying swords he made could only be used 10 times before they exploded and were destroyed. Therefore, Jiang Tian called them disposable flying swords. But at least disposable flying swords had good lethality. They could penetrate a large warship and blow up an airplane. The disposable flying swords combined with Zhang Qianlei's Thunder Talisman might be even more effective. After drawing the design, Jiang Tian had an idea. He contacted Zhang Qianlei and asked him to refine some supreme-grade Thunder Talismans according to his requirements. Zhang Qianlei was also a person who didn't want to lose out. When he heard that Jiang Tian wanted to make a flying sword, he insisted that Jiang Tian make one for him. Jiang Tian had no choice but to make a second-generation disposable flying sword that could fly dozens of times. After refining hundreds of disposable flying swords, Jiang Tian refined a large number of other small talismans and dharma artifacts as well as elixirs. After all this, 3 months had passed. The weather was very hot in August, and the sound of cicadas could be heard from the maple trees in Yuhua Mountain Villa. Basically, Jiang Tian had used up all the heavenly treasures that he had accumulated for more than 3 years. However, the harvest was also very rich. Many dharma artifacts could increase the combat power of Tianjun by 10 times. Although Jiang Tian was invincible in his previous life, he also knew the principle of preparing for a rainy day and winning 100 battles. Even a fierce tiger would use all its strength to catch a rabbit, not to mention that Jiang Tian was about to face a superpower. How could he let his guard down? Although the weather in Yanjing was dry and hot, Yuhua Mountain on Fragrant Mountain was quiet and cool. On this day, Jiang Tian, who was resting for a few days after refining weapons and elixirs, was wearing a long robe and sitting on a recliner under the octagonal pavilion. He was leisurely sipping tea like a retired grandfather, relaxed and at ease. Qing'er has almost completely absorbed the dragon marrow spirit vein. I'm afraid she's about to break through. Jiang Tian looked at the dragon pith spirit spring that was gradually drying up. His eyes flickered with amazement as he sighed. During this period of time, Zhao Xueqing didn't participate in the huge relocation project. She didn't even ask about it. She had been cultivating and advancing in Yuhua Mountain Villa. Now Zhao Xueqing was becoming more and more like a real cultivator. She was undistracted, calm and focused. It was as if cultivation was the only meaningful thing in the world, and she was too lazy to care about the worldly affairs. Actually, Jiang Tian wanted to quickly go to Sidoni's new training ground and consume the Guizhong Cauldron Heavenly Pill to quickly break through after a few months of absorbing the Dragon Marrow Spirit Vein. What's the point of wasting time here? These days, Grandpa Jiang Chongqing had reached the early stage of qi refinement and was comparable to a martial arts grandmaster. His parents and sister Ziwei also cultivated diligently when they were not working. Everyone could at least protect themselves in Sidoni and they could set off. However, Qing'er felt that it was not easy for Jiang Tian to take over Yuhua Mountain Villa. The Dragon Marrow Spirit Vein couldn't be wasted. He had to absorb it all. She's scared of being poor. Jiang Tian shook his head and sighed. He could only let Qing'er go. In the secular world, she had always been thrifty and frugal. She would break a penny into 2 petals. This was because she had lost her mother at a young age and was used to a hard life. She cherished the hard-won wealth and material things. This personality was also reflected in her cultivation. Zhao Xueqing cherished cultivation resources very much. She had to make the best use of everything. Zhao Xueqing's stainless phoenix immortal body was also very good. Her speed of absorption and her cultivation was very fast. This dragon marrow spirit vein weighed dozens of tons and was 100 meters deep. However, Zhao Xueqing had almost completely absorbed it in a few months. Jiang Tian was thinking. Boom. Suddenly, thunder rumbled above the dragon marrow spirit vein. The air trembled uneasily. Qing'er has broken through. Jiang Tian's face lit up with joy. He couldn't help but stand up and look at Zhao Xueqing in amazement. Chapter 625. The first thing Jiang Tian saw was a divine phoenix silhouette that seemed to have been reborn from the flames, and it enveloped Zhao Xueqing's delicate body. Screech. A sharp cry of a phoenix was heard. It was like a whistling arrow that shot into the sky. The sound was so loud that half of Yanjin could hear it. Thunder? And lightning? This lightning is so strange. Why is it so straight and thick? Doesn't disperse for a long time. That's shocking. Countless people in the city looked at the sky above Fragrant Hill in shock. Their pupils contracted and their eyes trembled. For many Yanjin citizens, the pillar of lightning was a wonder of nature. Seeing it disappear after a few minutes, they talked about it for a few days and forgot about it. But for Jiang Tian and the others, it meant a lot. Qing'er had officially entered the late stage of qi refinement. Jiang Tian saw it in shock. A divine phoenix was formed by true essence like fire. It was more than 10 meters tall and flapped its colorful wings. The godly phoenix released tens of thousands of rays of light, thousands of auspicious colors, looking extremely magnificent and resplendent. Suddenly, a wave of aura rose steadily, suppressing the world. This godly phoenix seemed to be riding on the breeze, stepping on the colorful clouds and breaking through the void. A pair of red phoenix eyes exuded boundless power. It was as if an ancient divine bird was looking down on the world, capable of devouring the heavens and devouring the earth, destroying all living things. The divine power, awe-inspiring phoenix ceremony has been activated. He has entered the 7th level of qi refinement. Jiang Tian's eyes were filled with shock and surprise. Even though Jiang Tian's divine body had reached phenomenal success and his soul energy was extremely deep, he still felt a sense of fear when facing Qing'er's soul energy. He couldn't help but exclaim. Her immortal body of the stainless phoenix has also reached phenomenal success. Jiang Tian scanned with his divine sense and he was shocked and overjoyed. My wife is too powerful. At the same time, Qing'er's immortal body of the stainless phoenix had also reached phenomenal success. Her body was extremely strong and could withstand the bombardment of missiles and artillery. His speed could also break through twice the speed of sound, and he was able to dodge the volleys of missiles, keeping abreast of Jiang Tian. Under the shadow, Zhao Xueqing's ethereal face was shrouded in a sacred 5-colored light, giving people a feeling of holiness, transcendence, and majesty. Did Qing'er make a breakthrough? This is too shocking, too powerful. Hearing the commotion, Yi Ziwei, Jiang Chongging, Zhang Wanqing, and the others all came over in shock. Yes. Jiang Tian nodded heavily. Good. Our Jiang family has 2 late-stage qi refinement cultivators, which is enough to overlook the entire world. The Americans aren't afraid either. Jiang Chongging was greatly comforted. He clapped his hands and sighed emotionally. His eyes were filled with joy. His cultivation was getting richer and richer. He knew that the late stage of qi refinement was enough to suppress the Eastern human immortals and Western sages. As for deity realm and level X ability users, they were no match for him. In the entire United States, there were only a few level X fighters. Boom. Qing'er withdrew her cultivation technique, and the billowing aura suddenly shrank back into her body, returning to her original appearance. She slowly opened her clear eyes. Seeing that everyone was there, she blushed and said embarrassedly, "Why is everyone here? Did I startle you?" "It's okay. Qing'er, you've made a breakthrough. Let's go," Jiang Chongging said with a smile. This time almost the entire Jiang family had moved to Sidoni. What surprised Jiang Tian was that Jiang Chongging, who didn't even want to move to Yanjin, was very supportive of the move. After asking, he found out that Jiang Chongging had seen the plague in Sidoni and was very sympathetic. At the same time, he also wanted to join Yuan Kursin and Zhu Jiangchao's medical team. However, Jiang Zhixing said that he wanted to stay in Jinlin City and didn't want to go to Sidoni with Jiang Tian. Regarding this, Jiang Tian also understood. He had just become the secretary of the Jinlin City Committee. He was young and had a bright future ahead of him. As for his safety, Jiang Tian wasn't too worried. Jiang Tian had left him a lot of protective jade talismans. His father had also reached the peak of physique tempering. Ordinary people couldn't hurt him at all. In addition, his father was now a member of the Provincial Standing Committee. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to touch him. Moreover, Jiang Tian had left Su Jinlei and his daughter to protect him. As for his uncles and aunts, The younger generation Jiang Bangxia, Jiang Lin and Jiang Chao were willing to follow Jiang Tian and start a business. However, the older generation was used to being conservative and didn't want to suffer. They wanted to stay in the country. Jiang Tian didn't care about that. Jiang Tian didn't have a deep relationship with them. He left them a few 100 million yuan, which was enough for them to live a good life. He left them to fend for themselves. With Qing'er's breakthrough, everything was ready. The 4-month-long migration finally began. Jinggang City, new port pier. It was crowded and bustling. Everyone was boarding the ship. Oh my God! There's a warship escort? And an aircraft carrier. Someone suddenly exclaimed. Everyone was shocked to see 5 ships flying the Wuxia military flag escorting them. An aircraft carrier called Taichu took the lead. Several fighter jets, bombers and helicopters were parked on it. Together with 22 newly purchased domestic warships, they formed a fleet called Sea of Stars. They pushed open the waves and slowly sailed over from the south. The warships had shiny steel sides. Their cannons were a few meters long and full of sturdy beauty. Their radars rotated like steel blue whales, pushing open the waves and speeding over. There were all kinds of armed helicopters, fighter jets and all kinds of weapons on the deck. Fully armed air, sea and land warriors were running and busy on the deck. They were mercenaries formed by Jiang Tian's retired soldiers recruited from Wuxia and from all over the world. They also included elites from the Great Circle and the fucking gang in Japan. This force was called the Sky Army. They were only loyal to Jiang Tian and protected the people of Sidoni. But the most eye-catching thing was the aircraft carrier. He was like a giant steel beast, shocking everyone. On the hull of the ship, there were 3 red Chinese characters painted in calligraphy. Taichu. The aircraft carrier Taichu was a decommissioned aircraft carrier purchased by the Hilton family's shipping company from a fleet of the British Royal Navy and sold it to Jiang Tian. And it only cost £2 million, which was equivalent to 20 million RMB. The aircraft carrier's original name was Excellence. It was an invincible aircraft carrier with a draft of 22,000 tons and a length of 500 meters. It had served the British Royal Navy for 20 years. In fact, it was not new for aircraft carriers to be sold after they were decommissioned internationally. And the price was not expensive. This was because there was a shortage of berths in the ports of various countries. This aircraft carrier was sold to make room for the new aircraft carrier Elizabeth. And the cost of maintaining an aircraft carrier was very high. In order to save money and focus on building a new aircraft carrier, outdated aircraft carriers were decommissioned, sold, or dismantled. But aircraft carriers were different from civilian ships. They had a lot of toxic materials and were expensive to dismantle. So aircraft carriers were usually not dismantled. They were either sold to some small countries or kept as a maritime military museum. On the aircraft carrier, Paris Hilton was wearing a red dress. The hem of her dress fluttered in the sea breeze. She held a glass of red wine and toasted Jiang Tian. Mr. Jiang, you will definitely make history. Standing on the deck, Jiang Tian nodded slightly and smiled faintly. If the military of Jiang Tian or Sidoni wanted to buy an aircraft carrier, it would definitely be heavily guarded by the major countries. Paris had bought the aircraft carrier in the name of using it as a military museum to avoid the pursuit of the British. But under Zhang Qing'an's guidance and a large group of military experts led by Iron Emperor, the aircraft carrier was now capable of combat and could adapt to the takeoff and landing of domestic fighter jets. When the British found out, they would definitely be furious and hate Paris Hilton to the core. But the Hilton family was also an old-school American tycoon. They had great influence in the political and economic circles of the United States. Paris was not afraid of them. The cruise ship Princess Jenny, that she had bought from the Hilton family, had been renamed Fairski. Jiang Tian, his family and many allies were on it. Behind the Fairski, Yi Gufeng's shipping company had more than 20 shipping ships that formed a transport fleet. They were filled with machinery and equipment from the Medicine King Group and the major manufacturing families under the Sky Alliance. After Jiang Tian boarded the Fairski cruise ship, all officers and soldiers of the Sky Troop salute the leader. We await your instructions. On the deck of the Taichu, Hu Qingtian stood beside a J-8 fighter jet. He solemnly raised his hand and saluted Jiang Tian. All officers and soldiers of the Sky Troop salute the leader. We await your instructions. On more than 10 military ships, nearly 10,000 fierce soldiers and generals lined up on the deck. They saluted Zhang Tian and shouted at the top of their lungs. The voice clear sky rang out from all directions, its aura soaring into the clouds. The sound of rolling thunder caused even the air in the sky to tremble. None of the spectators were not moved by this. Let's go. Destination, Sidoni Crepe Myrtle Harbor. Zhang Tian's face turned slightly serious. His eyes were firm as he saluted back and waved his hand. Amidst the whining of the sirens, warships set sail one after another. Under the complicated gazes of the people who saw them off, they sailed out of the new harbor and into the open sea heading south. Once out of the open sea, Zhang Tian will have nothing to do with Wuxia. Zhou Xian was deeply moved and his emotions were complicated as he stood in the sending-off party. There was some regret and disappointment, some helplessness and some deep worry and worry. I believe he will create his own glory. Zhantian sighed with mixed emotions. He definitely will. With Master Kang's strength, even the United States wouldn't dare to provoke him. Chao Jinjia, the Black Tortoise, and the other Dragon Group warriors all waved at Zhang Tian and the others. They were full of reverence and confidence. Violent Dragon, Fox, and many other war dragons also shed tears of reluctance. Son, you will always be my pride. Jiang Zhixing smiled as he saw Chen fan off. Suddenly he felt his face heat up. He raised his hand to touch it and felt 2 lines of hot tears. Zhang Tian didn't know that when they departed from the port of Wuxia, the Langley building and the Pentagon on the other side of the ocean were in chaos. Chapter 626. The fleet planned to head south first to Southeast Asia. After a short resupply in Singapore, they would pass through the Straits of Malacca and head southwest to Africa. There was no need to stop in Africa. They would pass through the Cape of Good Hope and head west to Sidoni. The voyage would take about a week. In the United States, at the border between Washington, D.C. and Virginia, the Langley building stood quietly by the sparkling Potomac River. Nothing new in the day. What a boring job. Inside the building, a CIB staff member responsible for monitoring Wuxia's territorial waters sipped his coffee while observing the coastal areas of Wuxia through the lacrosse radar satellite as usual. By God, what is this? A new aircraft carrier. When he saw the scene at the Newport Pier, he couldn't help but stare at it with his eyes wide open. It seems that I'm going to be promoted. I can't believe I observed such important information. The agent was suddenly energized. While sipping his black coffee, he quickly typed on the keyboard. All kinds of intelligence analysis and pattern recognition software quickly ran. After some investigation and information summarization, he immediately reported to Colonel Miller. An unfamiliar aircraft carrier has appeared at the new harbor in Wuxia's territorial waters. A series of investigations show that this aircraft carrier has appeared in the Straits of Gibraltar, the Mediterranean Sea and the Arabian Sea. It should be from Europe. What? Did Wuxia buy another aircraft carrier? Colonel Miller was shocked and frowned. Wuxia had been researching and building aircraft carriers, but it would take some time before they could be put into use. Currently, most of Wuxia's aircraft carriers were purchased, such as Minsk, Valerian, and so on. No, our lacrosse radar satellite's observation ability is accurate to 0.3 meters. We can confirm that the flag of this aircraft carrier is not Wuxia, but from Sidoni, the agent said with a strange expression. Due to the need for self-preservation, the CIB agents had many levels and were directly responsible to their superiors. There was no overlap in their work. In his opinion, Sidoni was the poorest country in the world. The average daily income was not even enough to buy a can of Coke. They must be crazy to import aircraft carriers. They should be buying pork. Sidoni. Colonel Methreya was shocked. He stood up and said quickly, "Gather all the information and give it to me in an hour." No, in half an hour. Yes. The agent was puzzled. Why was Colonel Miller more shocked and nervous than when he heard about the new aircraft carrier in Wuxia? The efficiency of the CIA was not to be underestimated. 10 minutes later, a report was sent to Colonel Miller. After receiving the report, Colonel Miller went straight to the CIB director's office. Seeing this scene, the agent stood in the corridor with a shocked expression and muttered, "My God, the report I made is going to be handed to Director Sheldon. Maybe the president will see it. I'm afraid I'm going to be promoted." In the United States, ever since the establishment of the CIA, the first person that every president met every day was the director of the CIA. Every president's first appointment and change would be the director of the CIA. The director of the CIA was directly appointed by the president and also served as a senior intelligence advisor to the president and Congress. He was often called the ears of the president, which showed the importance of this position. The current director of the CIA, Shelton, was 56 years old. He was a Republican in his 60s and his hair was gray. He wore a pair of glasses and held a pipe in his mouth. He had the air of a scholar and gave off a refined and cultured feeling. In fact, he was energetic, astute, and very scheming. The Americans jokingly called him the Fox director of the CIA. Colonel Miller, after the 1960s, superhumans and the so-called divine state have ceased to exist. But Kang Taechu's sudden rise is against common sense. You know, those so-called divine state are very afraid of the United States. What do you think? Sheldon frowned and asked after listening to the report. Although Colonel Miller was now in charge of the international superhumans who had long been relegated to a marginal position, he had served in the Langley building for more than 30 years and had rich experience. Sheldon still respected his opinion. Kang Taechu is far beyond any superhumans and cultivators we have encountered before. Colonel Miller's body was as straight as a sword. His face was solemn as he said firmly, "His confidence is based on his powerful strength. We suspect that he belongs to a different life form and represents a completely different civilization. His rise has the possibility of subverting the existing civilization order centered on technology and a free economy." Various intelligence reports show that the new order he established in the United States is a kind of false democracy centered on a serious cult of personality. It is a more deceptive dictatorship and personal centralization. Obviously, this is not in line with our values. At this point he straightened his body and his eyes bloomed with sharp killing intent. He said coldly, "Wuxia has an old saying, cut the weeds and dig up the roots to prevent future trouble. I think the United States should pay high attention to Kang Taechu and Sidoni and strike hard. Directly destroy Kang Taechu." "What you said makes a lot of sense." Shelton nodded and a hint of solemnity appeared on his face. A dictatorial country is not scary. A dictatorial military power is scary. The total amount of his military purchases is very considerable. Now his threat to us has surpassed North Korea and Iran. Shelton, the president, Rockefeller, and other established American plutocrats were in the same camp. These families were originally coveting Sidoni's Fermi magnetite and supported the war. Shelton and the others wanted to get rid of Zhou Xian, so it was reasonable to start a local war. As for Kang Taechu's crimes, supporting terrorist activities or possessing weapons of mass destruction were all fine. This time he had just bought a large number of warships and tanks. Everyone would believe him if he said he had nuclear weapons or something. With this thought in mind, Shelton took a deep puff from his pipe, waved his hand to disperse the smoke and said in a deep voice, "Form a more complete report. We will submit it to the President and the National Security Council." "Yes." Just as Colonel Miller was about to leave, suddenly a senior assistant rushed into the office and said, "Director Shelton, something has happened." "What? Don't you know how to knock?" Shelton frowned, looking very unhappy. "Sir, the Democrat House Intelligence Committee Chairman Dianne Feinstein has made a public speech, reprimanding the CIA for illegally searching their computers to remove material that is unfavorable to the CIA. The senior assistant said nervously. "They have prepared 6,400 pages of material, and the President of the Senate has said that they will declare war on the CIA." "What? The Senate Intelligence Committee is taking such extreme action?" Colonel Methria quickly took out his phone, opened the browser and Google News. America had a system of 3 separate powers. Legislative power, executive power, and judicial power belonged to Congress, the cabinet led by the President, and the court. The Congress of America was the executive power. Congress had a lot of power just like the people of Wuxia. Under the premise of conclusive evidence, Congress had the right and ability to impeach and re-elect the President. In America's history, there were 3 presidents, Andrew, Nixon, and Clinton, who were impeached by Congress and stepped down. Dianne Feinstein was the sworn enemy of the CIA, the Iron Lady of the United States Senate. She was known for her ruthlessness, meticulous thinking, superb tactics, and tough attitude. She was known as the woman who dared to challenge the President of the United States. However, what shocked Colonel Miller was that this time even the President of the Senate had spoken. In the media, he waved his fist and roared, shouting at the CIA across the air. The CIA eavesdropped on Congress, searched our computers, stole and transferred documents, lied to the Senate, stole the phone records of the Associated Press and other media outlets, and threatened the media controllers. The President of the Senate was filled with righteous indignation, and his words were tough. They have destroyed civil liberties and the right to know, and destroyed the separation of powers. They should know that Congress is not a toy dog but the supervisor of the CIA. We have a large number of seats on the Committee of Appropriations and have the right to veto their funding requests. Maybe they don't know. Then maybe we need to teach them a lesson. These materials will be submitted to the Supreme Court. If this information is true, some people will be arrested and jailed. As he read, Colonel Methria's expression changed drastically and cold sweat poured down. At present, many business and political media outlets around the world quickly followed up, and the wording and comments were almost one-sided. They spoke one after another, harshly criticizing the CIA's actions, and their attitudes were unprecedentedly radical and unified. If Congress chooses to be tough to the end, it can make Shelton's political career a living nightmare. Some media outlets commented gloatingly. The House of Representatives' 40 minutes of clear statements has made the battle between the House of Representatives and the CIA reach a climax. High-level struggle, the feud between the CIA and the Senate has been exposed, and the U.S. government may shut down. This scandal is no less than the Watergate incident. The Watergate incident forced Nixon to step down, and this time, it may be President Bush's turn. Some media outlets' headlines were shocking. The CIA's violent law enforcement has made the U.S. senators lose their dignity and decency. In fact, the CIA's actions have angered Europe and neighboring countries. The Congressional Intelligence Committee's clear statement shows that the relationship between the CIA and Congress has fallen to a freezing point. I think President Bush has to make a statement and choose which side to stand on. Some media outlets expressed this opinion. Don't panic. Congress just wants to get the respect they deserve. They won't dare to do anything to us. Looking at these reports, Shelton sneered and immediately ordered the deputy director to prepare for a press conference. As a roly-poly in the political world, he had experienced this level of struggle several times and had rich experience, so there was no need for him to appear in person. Chapter 627. The deputy director's wording was also very appropriate, as he sincerely claimed that this was just a misunderstanding. The CIB had never wanted to break the separation of powers, nor had they ever tried to weaken the power of Congress. Those so-called computer searches were just technical testing and protection. The original documents were never damaged. After the deputy director held a press conference in the morning, the situation seemed to have calmed down. President Bush called Shelton, but it was mainly to appease and provide strategic guidance. President Bush thought that this was just an ordinary political struggle and that Congress currently had no evidence to impeach the president and reorganize the cabinet. Those old foxes in Congress want to fight with us? They're still lacking. Shelton hung up the phone and sneered. Congress won't be able to get enough leverage. Also, the court may not be on their side. The court's investigation will take at least 3 months, and this time is enough for us to eliminate the relevant evidence. The deputy directors and other senior officials present showed a smug smile and nodded. Shelton's face suddenly turned cold, no longer having the elegance of the past. Instead, his eyes were malicious and ruthless, like a wolf that chose to devour the earth. He said coldly, "Dianne Feinstein, that stinking woman, is a vicious dog that always stares at the CB and bites and barks. How abominable. Investigate her, use funds and personnel from outside the staff. I want to take her down at all costs. Dig out all the dirt on her, including the sex scandals. Yes. A senior agent accepted the order and left. Shelton's order had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. Suddenly, hundreds of undercover agents heard the news and began to investigate Dianne Feinstein and the others. Seeing this scene, Colonel Miller was very impressed and couldn't help but silently give a thumbs up. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. Shelton was the real old fox. But at this moment, a bombshell that had been brewing for a long time exploded again. It was like a bolt of lightning from the nine heavens crashing down, pointing at Hilton and almost blowing him to pieces. Before leaving work in the afternoon, Dianne Feinstein gathered the media again and threw out a bombshell. And the one who cooperated with her was a former CIB Grade 10 agent, Jones. Dianne Feinstein directly released a set of 3,000 pages of investigation reports, directly criticizing the CIA's mistreatment of prisoners of war. The report claimed that the investigation began in 2006 and lasted for more than 4 years. Over the past 4 years, under Shelton's instructions, the CIA agents used various methods such as rectal water supply, Murphy drip, sleep deprivation, electric drill torture, and broom rape to inhumanely abuse 213 prisoners of war and enemy intelligence personnel. The report also published relevant videos and photos. As soon as this news spread, it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, and the entire world was in an uproar and filled with righteous indignation. American military institutions and consulates around the world were put on level 1 alert to prevent retaliation and violent attacks. Moreover, the release of this report had seriously damaged the relationship with some of the Allied countries. Isn't the United States a country that promotes human rights? Excuse me, where is human rights? A senior officer from the British MI5 asked angrily. The CIA's actions have seriously undermined the Declaration of Human Rights that they uphold. This is tantamount to slapping themselves in the face. Senior Russian KGB intelligence officers were shouting in the media. The world's superpowers were not monolithic. In fact, there were more internal conflicts. Before, there was the struggle for hegemony between the United States and the Soviet Union, and after that, there was the Cold War that lasted for many years. These superpowers all arranged for a large number of agents to steal each other's intelligence. Of course, there were also many intelligence personnel who were captured and imprisoned. At this time, seeing their own intelligence personnel being abused like this, many senior officials of these countries couldn't sit still and put pressure on the United States, strongly condemning it. International human rights organizations were also filled with righteous indignation and filed a complaint in the United States court, demanding the arrest of Shelton and the investigation of the CIA's mistreatment of prisoners of war and intelligence personnel. I support the investigation by Congress. Shelton must step down. He is the biggest threat to the security of the United States. Not only was there a lot of pressure from abroad, but even within the Republican Party, which was in the same camp as Shelton and President Bush, there were also a large number of people who supported Dianne Feinstein's report. These Republicans participated in the Vietnam War, became prisoners of war and suffered inhumane abuse. They couldn't accept this kind of scandal. On the streets of Washington, thousands of human rights organization members and citizens took to the streets, burning the stars and stripes and the CIA's flag. The president and cabinet's public support plummeted. Jones, this traitor, shameless. Too shameless. At this time, Shelton was completely panicking. He realized that Dianne Feinstein and Congress's attack on him was definitely well prepared. Moreover, it was aimed at his weakness, and there was even more to it. The right to privacy, the right to freedom of the press, the separation of powers, and equal human rights were all core values of the United States. With the president's support, Shelton could trample on one or two of them, but if he violated every one of them, the scandals would explode one after another and repeatedly touch the bottom line of the American people, then even the president wouldn't dare to protect him. This time, Shelton personally called Dianne Feinstein, hoping to get the other party's understanding and support, but the other party simply refused to talk. In the face of heated public opinion, strong international pressure, and different voices within the party, Shelton had no choice but to hold a press conference. He said with a heavy expression, "Exposing the truth like this and embarrassing the United States is a small matter, but more importantly, it will bring instability to the United States. Using torture is definitely dishonorable, but in the specific operations, it exists in every country. It's just that there has never been a country like the United States that has made it public. He complained with grievance. What's wrong with Congress? What's wrong with the United States? You have to know that we're fighting for national security. Before he could finish his sentence, a broken shoe flew out and landed squarely on his face. You're a dictator. You have to step down. The Associated Press will fight you to the end. The person who threw the shoe was a reporter from the Associated Press. When he was taken out by the bodyguards, he was still cursing non-stop. I'm very disappointed in your actions. You have to know that the CIA is protecting the United States. Shelton suppressed his anger and tried his best to maintain his poise. He pointed at the reporter and scolded coldly. Get lost. Step down. We protest, you have to step down. The American people are not underage children. We don't need to be monitored. Congress is not your toy. All the reporters were furious. At this moment they forgot their journalistic ethics, took off their shoes and threw them at Shelton. The scene of Xie Erkin being smashed was broadcasted live by the media for hundreds of millions of people to see. The press conference had to end hastily. Without a doubt, this is the most miserable, the most pathetic and the ugliest press conference in the history of the CIA. No one trusts the CIA and Langley building anymore because they no longer protect the people, but have become tools for the powerful to control the citizens. Some media reporters commented. The only one who really shamed the United States is the CIA. To be exact, it's only Hilton. In response to Shelton's speech, Dianne Feinstein immediately accepted the media interview and shouted across the air, Congress dares to expose itself because we believe that the United States is a great country. When it makes a mistake, it has the courage to admit and correct it. The United States is also a confident country and will learn from these events. I think those shoes have already shown the attitude of the American people. They flew towards the CIA, not Congress. Congress will always fight to protect the rights of the people. In this situation, even President Bush could not sit still. He spoke overnight and painfully expressed his deep regret and self-reproach for the series of evil acts committed by the CIA. The Judicial Department would investigate and give the people an explanation. They would not tolerate the abuse of the CIA. That night, Shelton was secretly summoned by the president to the president's residence in the White House to discuss the matter. Shelton, the situation is very tricky. Obviously, Congress is fully prepared. President Bush's expression was extremely solemn. Mr. President, Congress's investigation has been going on for several years, but why did it suddenly erupt at this time? I think there must be a mastermind behind the scenes. Shelton had to admit that both he and the president were facing an unprecedented crisis. The president was likely to abandon the pawn to protect the general, and his political career was likely to be over. It should be the California Consortium. The president sighed helplessly. In the Congress, only Mr. Marshall can control so many seats and have such overwhelming power. Obviously you have offended him. This is like the biggest joke in the world. Shelton laughed self-deprecatingly and shook his head gently. If I have ever offended him, it can only be because I ordered them to delete legends related to the god Sidoni. This does offend their interests and goes against the spirit of freedom of the press. But this is not enough for him to use such a huge force. In short, Shelton was someone who served the powerful, but Marshall was the real powerful. Marshall's opponents should be the leaders of the Rockefeller and the DuPont Consortium, not him. They were not opponents on the same order of magnitude. It was like when two groups of people were fighting. The other party's boss was chasing a lackey to death. Did not make sense at all. Moreover, even if Marshall controlled many seats in Congress, mobilizing such a huge force would cost him hundreds of millions of USD. But Shelton's previous threats against Facebook and other networks and media companies to delete posts brought minimal losses. This kind of seemingly unreal news brought less traffic than a scandal of a Hollywood star. On the other hand, Marshall should understand that the CIA must have done this for the overall interests of the United States, and the interests of the California Consortium were also part of the interests of the United States government. But as of now, we have no better explanation. President Bush smiled helplessly. If Mr. Marshall really wants to step down, I am willing to take responsibility and resign for the interests of the party. Shelton expressed his stance with a look of grief and indignation, but this stance was precisely in the hope that the president would retain him. Maybe we have no choice but to do this. The president shrugged helplessly and said with a moved expression, "The party and the United States will remember your meritorious deeds." At this moment Marshall was so angry that his whole body trembled. But in the end he could only sigh helplessly. "Very well, I will submit my resignation letter tomorrow." You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.